Inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
And we are live on a Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitter. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show. Yes, yes, yes. It is Hump Day. I agree. We're only halfway through this week, and I feel like so much has occurred and so much has happened. Glad to have you with me. Hopefully you'll enjoy the ride. Till 6 we go, and we start with a whole bunch of stuff NFL-related, which we're going to dive into throughout the show. Got a good action-packed, jam-packed show for you. Jason Fitz at 3. We'll get a lot of thoughts from him on the NFL draft, the NBA playoffs, and everything else that's going on. Paul Hudrick tonight, the Sixers play the Rockets. There was an NBA game last night that had big impact on the Eastern Conference race. So if you watch the Bucks and the Nets, you saw the Bucks beat the Nets for a second time this week. They beat them on Sunday, and they beat them last night, which means the Sixers now have a game-and-a-half lead over the Nets with 7 to play, 2 in the loss column, and they own the tiebreaker. So Sixers in a good spot. But as I said yesterday, it is not time to bail on this season. It's not time to say, man, I am bored with the NBA regular season. Get me to the playoffs. The Sixers essentially have playoff games every single night of the week. Whether they're fun playoff games, whether they're as impactful playoff games, doesn't matter. These games are huge for a team that needs to get this number 1 seed. And if you watched the Nets and the Bucks last night, right? If you watched the Nets and the Bucks last night, you saw the reason why you have to get that number 1 seed. Both those teams are really good. It was an epic game last night. A lot of fun. I mean, I say epic. 124, 118, lots of back and forth. Kyrie with 38. I mean, he was playing. Look, give Kyrie some credit. He had a great game last night, 14 of 25. And remember, they're playing last night. No James Harden still. Durant played 40 minutes last night. He scored 32, and they still lost the game. That tells you a little something about the Bucks. Giannis says, hey, don't forget about us. And I thought Giannis last night was very interesting after the game. You know, this is a team in the Bucks that has been the regular season champion for the last couple of seasons. They have been, hey, they're far and away the best team in the East, far and away the best team in the East, and has not represented the East in the NBA Finals yet, not once in the Giannis era. And Giannis, after the game last night, he was very candid about the fact that this is a regular season win. And to him, and this spawns off a whole nother story that we can kind of get into if you'd like. Up to you. You guys decide. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. But Giannis said this after the game last night.
Great wins, obviously. Happy that we were able to put up a show for our fans, and we were able to build good habits from those games. But that's all. They don't mean nothing. And nobody's going to remember these games when we're in the playoffs. Me personally, it doesn't mean nothing to me.
That's interesting. Me personally, winning this game means nothing. No one's going to remember this game when we get to the playoffs. You know, and he's right, but it's funny. We love to harp on, they lost this game and they lost that game, and here's a player saying, no one's going to remember that we beat the Brooklyn Nets on Tuesday night. You know, I'm typically – the guy who would say Tuesday night in February. Well, the NBA season has gone into May now because of starting late because of COVID. But a Tuesday night in May, he's saying no one's going to remember us beating the Nets. In other words, if we don't win these games in the playoffs, doesn't matter. And he's absolutely right. More from Giannis.
All I care about is that team was able to come out playing hard. Everybody was locked in. Offensively, we took care of the ball. We got clean looks. We tried to make it as hard as possible for them. So, I'm happy for that. But for the win or lose, does not mean nothing. Playoffs going to be all different case, So I'm just happy that we're able to build good habits, and that's pretty much it.
What is that?
Personally.
What is that? That is a Giannis Antetokounmpo who is now growing up. That is Giannis Antetokounmpo, much like you're hoping the Sixer duo has. Lost games, learned from it. Here's young Giannis putting up stats, winning MVPs, being the quote-unquote best player in the league, and then losing in the playoffs. Here's Giannis winning back-to-back MVPs and having personal success, but not having team success. And that is something you heard in his answer there. It's a regular season game. It doesn't matter. We beat the Nets twice. Nobody cares. And he's absolutely right. Now, that's the good and the bad about sports. We have gotten to a point that the two of the best teams in the East match up this late in the season, back-to-back, late in the year, and here's the player saying, doesn't matter. That's bad. That's a bad road that the sports world is going down, is that this regular season game between two of the best teams in the East, here's your MVP of the league telling you it doesn't really matter. And he's not wrong. Who cares? The Bucks won the game last night. If they lose, here's the thing. It mattered for a couple of reasons. Giannis is right. If the Bucks lose to the Nets in the playoffs, those two wins in the regular season don't matter. But here's the difference. If you don't want to play the Nets, bless you. Wow, that was a loud sneeze over there by one Josh Henning producing today's show. He did cover his face with his shirt. Now his chest is filled with snot, but that's okay. Here's the difference. If you don't want to play the Nets and the Sixers, get out of that 3 spot. If you're the Nets and you don't want to play the Sixers and the Bucks, get out of that 2 spot. And if you're the Sixers and you don't want to play the Nets and the Bucks, stay in the 1 spot. That's what you take from last night's game. Because ultimately, I'll be honest, you do not want to play either one of those teams, but you certainly don't want to have to play both of them. That's not saying something crazy. I get it. But this is what I'll tell you. That Bucks team is a lot better than I think people are giving them credit for. Look, they went toe-to-toe with it. Now, I get it. The Nets are still shorthanded. Still no James Harden. And I'm not so sure when James Harden will even be back and how he fits in. But I'll tell you what, they need him. It's crazy to say a team with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, they need James Harden. They need every bit of James Harden because a team with Kevin Durant, Green, Harris, DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin, they ain't good enough. And you saw it last night. Yeah, Durant can score and Kyrie can score, but other than that, they don't got a lot of scoring. You know Joe Harris in the playoffs deemed obsolete. Are we really planning on getting 34 minutes from Jeff Green in a playoff game? They need James Harden. But that just shows you how good the Bucks are. Antetokounmpo 36, Middleton 23, and he didn't even have a great game last night shooting the ball from distance. Holiday coming back, big addition to that team. It was a fun game, but what I took from the game is these two teams, you do not want to have to go through back-to-back 7-game series with them. So how do you avoid it? You just keep winning. You just got to keep plugging away and keep winning. You cannot slip up. You cannot slip up. And the hard part of this to say is the Sixers have won 5 in a row. Guess what? A lot of these teams behind you in the standings, the Knicks, the Warriors. The Warriors too. The Wizards. They all ripped off 8, 9-game win streaks. You're going to have to do what they did. And you know what? You're better than them. So you should be able to. Washington's 8 out of 10. The Knicks won 8 in a row, 9 out of 10. If you're Philadelphia, you've got to do the same. You've got a 5-game winning streak right now. Brooklyn's got a 3-game losing streak. You got to take advantage of the fact that you're playing the worst team in the NBA tonight, the Houston Rockets. This is a game where not only, the best case scenario is not only do you win this game, you win it handily. You had back-to-back tough scraps against two teams that are not all that talented in Chicago and San Antonio. So you had to put the bare knuckles up and start swinging. Now you got a Rockets team that's abysmal. You got to take care of business, and you got to put them away so that your stars can sit and watch this one from the sideline in the fourth quarter. Thursday off, you come back home. And this is where it gets interesting, because that New Orleans Pelicans team is 2 games out of the play-in tournament. So you got the Pelicans Friday night, a team that blitzed you the last time you played them. And then you're playing a Detroit team that's wretched on Saturday. So you got back-to-back. So Friday night is the game that you really got to get yourself rested up and ready for, because that Pelicans team has got something to play for. The Detroit game, that should be a relatively easy game to get through. We talked about it with Michael Blowman yesterday during Inside the Sixers. How many of these 7 games left are they going to have to get? Well, they got to get Houston. They got to get the Pistons game. They play Indiana, who's in that play-in mix right now, and I think they're going to get in it. They are 4 games up on Toronto. It would be a pretty monumental collapse for Indiana to fall from 9 to 11 at this point. Then you play the Heat, who right now are sitting at 6. They don't want to get in that play-in tournament. So that game becomes pretty important for Miami, who sits just a half game up on Boston for the 7th spot. For those of you who remember this play-in tournament, the 7th seed is not guaranteed a playoff berth, oddly enough. See, I don't mind the notion of the play-in tournament. I don't like the way they did it. To make the 7th seed play for seeding is ridiculous. I'm not a big fan of a play-in tournament to begin with, but if it's making these games a little bit more, they have a little bit more oomph behind them, fine. It's very gimmicky. This is a professional sports league that is now playing one-off games for seeding. It's ridiculous. Why don't you just pull them out of a hat? Hey, you're going to play them, they're going to play you, and you're going to play him if he wins. It's ridiculous, really. The thought of a play-in tournament is preposterous, but whatever. Again, a gimmick to try to get fans more engaged. Fine. Boston will play Charlotte. Boston beats Charlotte. Indy plays Washington. Washington beats Indy. Now Charlotte plays again and plays Washington. It really should have been for the 8th spot, but whatever. This is what they came up with. Then Philly plays the Magic twice to close the season out. Orlando packed it in a while ago, although they have won 2 straight. They traded Vucevic. They can't make the play-in tournament. So I would think that there's no reason, no reason why Philadelphia can't win 6 out of their last 7. And really should be able to win 7 out of 7 because that Pelican team stinks too. Here's the catch. If that happens, you would be entering the playoffs on a 12-game winning streak. Very interesting. A couple years ago, they entered the playoffs on an 18-game or 14-game win streak, and then they won a couple playoff games. They played that first-round series against the Heat. If they win every game the rest of the way, and they will be favored to do so, and quite frankly, they should, they would be entering the playoffs on a 12-game win streak. Now, the 2 games at question would obviously be the Pelicans and Miami. So the question is, if you lose those 2, and that's the only 2 games you lose the rest of the way, and Brooklyn wins out, you would finish tied with Brooklyn and have the tiebreaker over Brooklyn. Now, Brooklyn's final set of games. So Philly can afford 2 losses. They can afford 2 more losses, and that would finish. If Brooklyn wins out the rest of their games, Philly loses 2, they would finish tied. And that's why last night, Brooklyn losing that game was pretty important. Brooklyn plays at Dallas, at Denver, at Chicago, and then San Antonio, Chicago, Cleveland. I would imagine they're not losing to Chicago and they're not losing to Cleveland. San Antonio, likely not. So you need either a loss at Dallas or at Denver, and that would make it almost insurmountable for the Nets to be able to get the number 1 seed, the way I see it. As for the Bucks, now the Sixers have a 3-game lead in the loss column over the Bucks. The Bucks have 24 losses, which means if the Sixers were to lose 3 of their last 7 games, now I don't know who has the tiebreaker. Can you find that, Josh? Who has the tiebreaker between the Sixers and the Bucks? I think they only played twice, and the Bucks they played 3 times. And the Bucks beat the Sixers all 3 times. So that would tell me they have the tiebreaker. Yeah. I didn't realize they played 3 times. I thought they played twice. Yeah, and they played 3 times. The Bucks beat the Sixers all 3 times. So in this scenario, if the Sixers lose 3 more times and the Bucks win out, the Bucks would be the number 1 seed. They play Washington, Houston, San Antonio, Orlando, Indiana, Miami, Chicago. Not exactly murderer's row there. There's no reason to think that the Bucks can't win out. Really, the tough 2 games they have, they got this Washington team that's playing outrageous tonight. They're going to blitz Houston. I would imagine they beat San Antonio. I would imagine they beat Orlando, Indiana. Then they play Miami. Miami's got something to play for. And then you've got Chicago. I could see them maybe losing a game, probably not 2. So it shows you how important this is and how these games, the Sixers have a lot to play for here. They are 2 losses up on the Nets. They are 3 losses up on the Bucks. You cannot, I stress, you cannot take your foot off the gas right now. Can't do it. And you got to thank the Bucks for their help. That's big time. Getting them twice. But it won't matter if you lose 2. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Hit me up in the live video chat. And if you're listening on the radio, 609-403-0973. Sixers get the 1 seed. All of us Sixers fans will definitely remember the Bucks beating the Nets last night. Yeah, you have to. It's a big win for the Bucks last night because if the Nets win that game, they're just a game back. They have 22 losses. You have 21, and the margin of error slips a little bit. Now the Nets have lost 3 in a row. Milwaukee's won 3 straight. They haven't been able to make up any ground, so that helps. The Sixers are 3 solid games up on the Bucks. Philly's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to play. Milwaukee's got 7 to play. And I believe Brooklyn has 6 to play. I think the Sixers have a game on Brooklyn. I got to count that back up. Where are they at 66 games? And the Sixers are at 65. Yeah, so the Sixers have a game at hand on Brooklyn. So that's how we start today's show, with how important that game really, really was last night. It was a big one. It was a big one. All right. We opened there. Phillies last night with a win. Wacky game last night. Sports Bash brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Jason Fitz at 3. Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers. Jeff Mosher football at 4. Rob Motti today. and Jeff Kerr. So we're busy. We're jam-packed. We enjoy it. Love the conversation. Love the back and forth. Love the two-way. So keep them coming. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973 on the text board. And if you're watching the show live, hit me up on the chat. And, we love the back and forth. It's always good. Keep in mind, Sixer fans, I know this regular season seems like it's putt, running out of gas. These games are very important. We just mapped out why. All right, we start there. Sports Best Live. Phillies with a win. 2 in a row. Can they make it 3? They got all sorts of crazy issues in that game last night. We'll map them out. Coming up next. Twenty-six after 2. Mike Gill with you. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. Watch the show live. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. I think that by the way, somebody texted in about the play-in games. I like the play-in games. The 7 through 10 are irrelevant anyway. The 7 and 8 seeds lose in the first round 99% of the time. Yeah, I agree with that. The 7, that's why we talk so much about if you're not 1, 2, or 3, you essentially don't have a shot historically. It's getting, to the point, though, where it's just so gimmicky. But whatever. I don't think that the play-in game you're going to get right now. If the NBA playoffs were to start right now, the play-in games would be Boston against Charlotte and Indiana against Washington in the East. Are you putting your life on pause to watch those 4 teams play? No. I mean, maybe Boston has a little bit of buzz nationally, but Charlotte, I mean, I would bet you 85% of NBA casual fans don't even know that Charlotte has an NBA team. And I'm not joking. I probably would be, if I walked around and asked half the NBA audience who are just casuals, they probably don't even know Charlotte has an NBA team. And in the West, you've got Portland Golden State. Now, that's a game that has some interest behind it. You get Dame Lillard against Steph Curry in a one-game one-off. Let me tell you, those 2 teams would be a heck of a lot of fun to watch in a one-gamer. Memphis, San Antonio, I don't know that you could find 2 less interesting teams. I mean, Ja Morant's a lot of fun. The rest of the team, they're very Grizzlies, let's say. It's a team that is very defensive-oriented. But Morant's fun. I don't think that's going to be the case, though, because I think the Lakers will end up falling into the play-in game. The Lakers are in some trouble right now. LeBron's not playing the next 2 games. They're only 1 up on Portland. So I wouldn't be surprised if LA fell into the play-in game and Portland jumped out of that. You have right now the matchups in the East would be Philly against either – now, this is interesting because Boston and Charlotte play. The winner of that game is the 7th seed, right? So let's say Boston wins. They beat Charlotte. Boston's now 7. Then what happens is the loser of that game, which would in this instance would be Charlotte, they would play the winner of the Washington-Indiana game in a one-game playoff. So now let's say Washington beats Indiana. I just like the way Washington's playing better than Indiana right now. And then Washington would play Charlotte. Charlotte would then be bounced, and then Washington becomes your 8th seed. So then the playoffs would be Philly versus Washington. Not fun, by the way. Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook. That's an interesting one. They essentially are the 10 seed right now. They're only 2 back of Charlotte for the 8th spot. I would think, okay, so what you're rooting for is for Washington to get out of that spot and play for the 7-8 game and become the 7 seed. That would be a good scenario. That would mean Boston could possibly be there in round number 1. So the matchup would be Philly, Washington, under my scenario there, Brooklyn, Boston, Milwaukee, Miami. So then if Milwaukee were to win the championship from this 3 seed, they would have to beat the defending Eastern Conference champions, the Brooklyn Nets, and then Philadelphia. That would be the Bucks' path to get to the finals, beating Miami, Brooklyn, and then Philly, if everything played out correctly. In Brooklyn's scenario, they would have to beat Boston, Milwaukee, and then Philadelphia. In Philadelphia's situation, they would have to beat Washington, Charlotte, or Indiana, one of those teams, and then either New York or Atlanta, and then either Brooklyn or Milwaukee. You see the benefit of being the number 1 seed? Holy manoli, that's a difference. Now, if you go out west, just to throw the Western Conference in here real fast, you got a tie for first out there right now, Phoenix and Utah. LA Clippers are 3, Denver's 4, Dallas is 5. The top 4 spots are already locked. 5 and 6 can't catch 1, 2, 3, or 4. Same in the East. The top 3 are done. 4, 5, and 6 are still up for grabs. I think Miami's 2.5 behind the Knicks right now. Atlanta's 1.5 behind the Knicks. Just saying the Knicks is odd that they're in the 4th spot right now, but I'll give it to them. So in the West, let's see how this plays out in the West. Right now, it would be Phoenix against either, Portland, Golden State, Memphis, or San Antonio. I would imagine, let's say Portland plays Golden State and Golden State wins that game. They would be the 7. Portland would then play the winner of the Memphis Spurs game. Let's say Memphis wins that game, so Portland's now the 8. That's how that would work. Phoenix or Utah would play the 8. Utah or Phoenix would play the 7. And then you have Clippers, Lakers would be the round 1 matchup right now. And Denver, Dallas would be the first round matchup. New Orleans is 2 out. Unfortunately, they're going to watch the refereeing in New Orleans Pelicans games coming down the stretch here. Right? They're going to do whatever they can to get the Pelicans in that play-in game. Who does the NBA want to see in a play-in game? The Spurs or the Pelicans? You got Zion versus Ja Morant, or you got Memphis against San Antonio. What do you think's going to happen here? Let's just watch. My DraftKings comment for the day is bet the Pelicans down the stretch. Bet the over on Zion points, I would think. Zion free throws in a game. Over, under, 10, over. I mean, it's crazy, though, that they're 2 out with, what are they at, 66 games they've played, 30 and 36. Yeah, 66 games. So 6 left for them. A couple text messages coming in, 609-403-0973. Mike, the Washington Wizards might be a tougher out as the 8th seed than people think. Oh, I think I just echoed that. You playing against Washington in round 1, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. If they're healthy all season, as the text message continues, they'd be up there with the Knicks, Heat, Boston tier. Yeah, Washington has played tremendous second half of the season. They have been maybe one of the best teams in basketball down the stretch. I mean, since the All-Star break, they went on they won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. They've won 13 out of 16. Now, they've won 13 out of 16. Orlando, Sacramento, New Orleans, Detroit, Oklahoma City twice, Cleveland, a banged-up Lakers team, Cleveland again, Indiana. The games they've lost, Phoenix, San Antonio, and Dallas. So let's put context behind it. Yeah, they've won a lot of games. They're playing a lot better. They haven't exactly. Now, they did beat Utah 125-121. That's the best win they've had in there. They did beat Golden State twice. Golden State, by the way, is not all that good. But you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you. The Washington Wizards are a team that the 8 seed would not be fun. You have a Washington Wizards team that scores 115 a game, right? And what does Philly like to do? They like to play defense. So Philly has the best defense other than the Knicks, and Washington has one of the worst defenses. And quite frankly, the one problem Washington would have in a series against Philadelphia, they don't have a lot of size. I don't know how they would, in a 7-game series, they're starting, I think Neto starts for them, to be honest with you. And, right, plays a lot of minutes for them. But their center position for them has been an albatross. They got big problems there. So that would be, the other night, the Pacers and the Wizards played. It was either last night or the night before. The game was 154-141, and that was in 4 quarters. They didn't have double overtime or triple overtime. If it was 154-151, I'd say, how many overtimes do you think they played? None. The answer was none. Indiana is not the biggest offensive threat in the league, by the way. You couldn't name a Pacer, right? You can't name a Pacer, and they scored 141 against the Wizards. So, I mean, and Brogdon, who might be one of their better scorers, didn't play the Pacers. So Washington defensively is a sieve. They're horrible, but they're a lot of fun. They score a lot of points. The one thing Philly has going for them is they have a good defensive team. Westbrook doesn't shoot it all that well. You're relying on Beal a lot in that series. Not to mention Beerton's not a bad player, shoots the ball pretty well. But you're right, text message, the Wizards are a very interesting out as the number 8 seed, if that's who you end up playing in that game. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. That is a fun fact of the day there, Danuch. The top 2 seeds in the West, Phoenix and Utah, both head coaches are former 76ers assistants with Brett Brown. Fun fact of the day. Yeah, you've got Quinn Snyder, who was on the Brett Brown bench during the process years. And you got Monty Williams, who was on the team's bench when they were starting to get better. That's a fun fact of the day for you. Yes. Here's the thing. Of Phoenix and Utah, see, with the Lakers kind of in limbo right now, are we starting to believe in them a little bit more? Are we starting to believe in Phoenix and Utah just a little bit more the way this whole thing's kind of playing out right now? And my answer to you is you have to. Because I thought Bart Scott today made an interesting point, and I agree with him. I talked about this before. And look, Anthony Davis won a world championship last year. Let's be honest. LeBron James won a world championship last year. Anthony Davis was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. When you draft a guy number 1 overall, what is that guy supposed to do? It's supposed to change your franchise. It's supposed to make you go from the worst team that had the number 1 pick to now start to build towards a championship. Anthony Davis never did that in New Orleans. And he's not doing it now in LA while LeBron is out. LeBron is out and Anthony Davis is there. And as Bart Scott echoed, I'll echo what Bart Scott said today. He's supposed to be a top 5 player in the game. If you're telling me he's a top 5 player, but the team isn't good enough to get out of the 7th spot, you don't have a top 5 player. You have an overrated player, is what you have. I find that conversation is always interesting. like that borderline. You have these players who are great players. Like Russell Westbrook's a great player. And people are like, I don't want that guy on my team. You're an 8 seed with Russell Westbrook. Well, what are you if you just have Anthony Davis? What are you if you have Anthony Davis and he's your best player? You're not much more than an 8 seed. That's what he was in New Orleans, and that's what he is now. I mean, this Lakers team, when they have LeBron, you throw one guy on that team. They're the best team in the league, and it's not close. You take one guy off that team, and they've now dropped to the 6th seed, and they're complaining about the play-in tournament. Maybe your second best player isn't as good as he thinks he is. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Text messages are coming in, and we'll continue to riff on them. If you're watching the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, keep your comments coming. Jason Fitz will join me on video at 3 o'clock today. Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers at 3:20. And Mosher has today's football at 4. What do the depth chart for the Eagles look like now? I want to get into that Philly stuff from last night, too. I got a text message on the Phillies, so I'll address that coming up next, right here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. And watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. All right, here we go. Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. I want to give you my thoughts on that Phillies game last night. I mean, Girardi's lineup card gaffe aside, got to give him credit for toughing a game out because we don't know that Daniel De Los Santos. We're all assuming he would have got somebody out. David Hale didn't get anybody out either, but I'm just saying, a guy that no one's ever heard of for the most part, you all thought were going to come in and start pitching well. Let's be honest. That wasn't going to happen. That being said, I mean, Girardi at least took it like a man and said, look, it was my fault. I missed it. I messed up. Like, he owned it. But how is it that difficult? How does Major League Baseball have it that difficult? Where they got to turn the lineup into Major League Baseball. Baseball sends it back to them. I mean, how does that get lost in the sauce is what I want to know. Now, they made a late roster change. Sanchez came up 2 days ago, didn't pitch, and then got sent back down the next day. They wanted De Los Santos because he specifically was there to pitch in that game last night because they knew they were down arms because of the night before. So they literally called De Los Santos up there for one reason, and that was to make an appearance in that game because they knew they needed a guy to get him through an inning. So for him to not be on the lineup card, he's like the first guy you write on that card. And believe me, I heard what he said. You count up and down that card. 26, you're counting up, down, up, down. You are making sure that everybody's on there and checking it twice. I will say this. Girardi gets the blame. He's the manager. It's on him. He's in charge. But I will tell you this. From somebody who writes out lineup cards and fills out lineup cards, that thing is out of your hand and someone else is filling that thing out. Really. I mean, you sit down, they're probably typed out now. I mean, I can't imagine they're writing it by hand. And it's just amazing to me. Like, Girardi deserves the blame, but that the second guy, the third guy, the fourth guy all missed it as well. How did that many people miss it? I get Girardi missing it. I'm almost saying I'm on Girardi's side here a little bit. He gets the blame. He's the manager. But how did everybody miss it, including Girardi? Luckily, it didn't cost him. But what it could cost him is David Hale, who stinks anyway, is not going to be available today. You don't have, I would imagine, Coonrod will not be available today. Who knows if Neris is back and available today after he threw about 40 pitches the night before. Now, I guess you have De Los Santos tonight. That was the one thing that Girardi said was, well, at least he's fresh now. You know that. So De Los Santos should be available for 2 innings if so. But there's a couple other things. All kidding aside, I mean, that is just a gaffe of all gaffes there. And it just compounds the problems that this team is having. Defensively, they're abysmal. How is a Major League Baseball team abysmal defensively? And the funny part is the Brewers were the ones that made 3 errors last night, and the Phillies made none. But you just watch this team and wonder, you know, how are you that bad defensively? Here's a couple takeaways. Nola struggled in the first, settled into the game, fought his way through 6. I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and he says, you know, do you really think Nola's a number 1? And I said, not really. No, I think he's a top level number 2. If he's your number 1, you're a 500 team. Now, I thought he pitched good last night. He had 10 strikeouts, but he had a battle. And if you're facing a better lineup than that, I mean, they got Vogelbach hitting 3rd. He's hitting 197. Oh, what a disgrace. You talk about the lineup card. Did Craig Counsell check his lineup card and say, hey, who put Vogelbach in the 3-hole? Did I miss that? Because, I mean, come on. You got a guy hitting 197 hitting in the 3rd hole. He was a guy on waivers, by the way, Vogelbach. I'm not taking anything away from Vogelbach. He's got a great look for a baseball player. He just looks like he should be playing in the softball circuit. That's why I like him. But it's not an impressive lineup that the Brouhahas are throwing at you. And Nola's like fighting his way through that game last night. Although I thought after the first he settled in. the takeaways are this. I'm really happy for McCutchen. He's a player that you like, you want to love, and he was struggling so bad. But he's starting to look like he tweaked the swing a little bit. Swinging down and through the ball, much more leveled out swing. And you see when he hits the ball down and through, the ball's exploding, and he's hitting the ball hard right now. Couple home runs last night, although he's not very good at rock, paper, scissors, apparently. The other takeaway from the game last night is, and this was addressed afterwards, Brad Miller's a guy that you're going to start to see play a lot more baseball, but Roman Quinn, who's starting to play a little bit better, getting himself on base, hit another triple, he had to get placed on the injured list today. And I know you're like, well, Quinn's hitting 136. You know, Quinn hitting 136 and his on-base percentage at 269 is better than Alec Boehm's on-base percentage, and it's not much worse than Rhys Hoskins' on-base percentage, who somehow hits in your two-hole with a 290 on-base percentage. Roman Quinn is at 269. Hoskins is at 290. And now Quinn, who's finally starting to turn the tables, has to go on the 10-day. 9 stitches in his finger. So right when Quinn was starting to maybe turn things around, he has to go on the injured list. Girardi, what did he talk about last night? We need bodies, man. We need more bodies. They've lost Hasely in center. They've now lost Quinn in center. You're going to see Odubel Herrera and possibly Nick Maton playing center field for this team. Probably 2 things you didn't think you would say back in April. That Odubel Herrera and Nick Maton are going to start playing center field for this team. Now, this is already a bad defensive team. Do you play Bryce Harper in center field so that you can get Miller some more time playing right field, or Matt Joyce more time playing right field? Because you're not putting Miller in center field. My God, he's horrendous in the outfield. But you're just trying to hide him on a corner. You're not playing McCutchen in center anymore. He's got a tough enough time playing left. So do you ask Bryce Harper to play some center field? I mean, is that the next thing, the next scenario that we come to? Hey, Bryce, we need you to go play right so I can get Brad Miller into the lineup. Think about that. I mean, Miller tattooed that ball last night, by the way. He absolutely tattooed that thing. And Matt Joyce is another option, I guess you can, just to get another bat in the lineup. But you're going to see a lot of Herrera, I would imagine. And once Gene Segura, who apparently is doing a minor league rehab assignment right now, he should be back and ready to play soon. So you'll get Segura back at second. That means Nick Maton's time in the lineup is going to be coming to a close unless they can find a spot for him to play. Here's the thing. Maton, a left-handed hitter. Gregorius is also a left-handed hitter. You know, I was thinking of like, hey, can you get Maton some at-bats for Gregorius so that you can get the glove in there? Maton's got a better glove than Gregorius right now. But they both hit left-handed. I mean, I guess you could think about doing some sort of Maton plays second one day, short one day, goes to the outfield for a day. Let's not sit here and say that Maton's all that ready to handle the bat. He struck out twice last night. He's down to 327. But guess what? He might be a better option than Herrera is right now, who's hitting 083. So it's the Phils back in action tonight. I think it's Anderson tonight. How did the pitching thing get so messed up where now Anderson's following Nola? How'd they get so off track? It should be Nola Wheeler, but somehow I'm pretty sure Anderson's pitching tonight. Sports Bash Live, 97.3, ESPN. Phillies trying to make it 3 in a row with the win over the Brewers tonight in a 4-game set. Jason Fitz joins me next.
Mobile, Atlantic City, a town square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
Just after 3 here on a Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash. Well, if you were outside, you just got soaked because it just came down for a quick, hard 10 minutes or so. I think it's okay now. It's like Florida weather here in Jersey. What's going on, everybody? This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. And right now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline, it's my friend Jason Fitz from Spain and Fitz on ESPN Radio. And he, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline as we dive through it all. There's so much going on. There's so many different things I want to kind of hit on and touch on. But I got to ask you, Jay Fitz. I know, big Raider fan. Everybody keeps telling me that was the worst pick of the draft. Do you concur?
No, I don't think it was the worst pick of the draft. I think, at some point.
First round.
Right. So I will say this. I hosted all 3 days digitally. I'll humble brag, by the way. Thanks to everybody that watched. We had 7.8 million people watch just the first night of the draft on the digital shows alone. So huge numbers. And the funny thing is we have a great staff that have put together cut-ups of every single player that you could possibly imagine through the course of the draft. The only time in 3 days they had to say, hold on, we don't have it, is when the Raiders picked Leatherwood in the first round. Now, the hard part about that is I got to give some benefit of the doubt because Mike Gill Jr. made fun of me a few years ago when they selected Colton Miller in the first round of the draft. They just gave Colton a big extension. He's turned out to be a really good player. So maybe they get some benefit of the doubt across the board. But the Raiders really get lucky because Trayvon Merrick was still sitting there for them in the second round. That's who I thought they'd take in the first round. And I will say, I think it's funny. I came in on day 3, I came in, I log into the computer, I go to ESPN.com and I see my face on the side and it says trending, Fitz pleads with Raiders. Cause I finally just had to tell him on day 2, hey, I'm the one that pays for it when you guys do dumb things. So, but I think realistically, what we all need to remember this year particularly is that if you went out and you got your guy, that's all that matters. The Eagles did the same thing, right? Getting Devontae Smith, like they went out and got their guy. And that's going to be the most important thing. In the end of the day, if it works out, nobody cares where you were drafted. If it doesn't work out, they're going to obsess over it. So, that's just the theme for every team. That's
definitely the case. It's like, hey, 5 years from now, you were either drafted third round in a steal or first round in a bust. And, we look back at these things. And, what I want to get from you is, as you hosted, digitally all 3 days, where was the moment in that first night where it all kind of like got wild and changed? Like, was there that time where you're like, okay, we knew this was going to happen. We knew this was going to happen. Oh, that's a little surprising. Now things just got interesting.
Well, I think Trey Lance at 3 was interesting to me, but the moment it really blew up was when Dave Gettleman did what Dave Gettleman never does. I mean, like, it's rare to have a trade where on both sides of it, I say, I get it, and this worked. Like the Giants trading down and getting a king's ransom to do it makes a ton of sense in the sense that the Bears were in this moment where I always relate it to eBay. Like you're out on eBay, you know what you'll pay for an item. Then you realize you get in there, you're really excited about it. Now you'll pay a little more, but then you realize it's 3 days before your wife's birthday. And if you don't get this, you don't have anything for her. That's where the Bears were with Justin Fields. So I totally appreciate overpaying to be aggressive to go up and get your quarterback. Again, no one's going to care if Fields is good. No one will care what they gave up to get him. So, but I think particularly the fact that Gettleman finally traded down was really astounding. And then to see 2 NFC East teams doing business with each other, to me, like that whole little segment of the draft I thought was under talked about going in, where you have 3 straight division rivals every round that are going after each other. I thought that was great drama in the NFL draft. So kudos to everybody involved. And not just because I'm talking to you guys, but by the way, I think the Eagles had a really nice draft, and Kenneth Gainwell is not getting enough love. That is a kid that is going to come in. Watch Memphis running backs in the NFL. Memphis running backs make it in the NFL because Memphis knows how to groom running backs. Gainwell is not good. He's great, and he is going to be somebody that I think the Eagles can bank on for a while. So he was a steal in the 5th round.
There you go, Josh. You can add those quotes to your story that you just wrote about Gainwell. He's not good. He's great. Jason Fitz here. So let me ask you this. Would you, hindsight now, of course, do the deal to get Devonta Smith, if you're the Eagles, or stayed at 12 and took the trade that the Bears did with the Giants, move back to 20 and got a 4th first-round pick for next year. Devonta Smith next year, or pick 20 and add, because I kept saying all week is if I'm the Eagles, I'm calling the Bears and I'm asking, first-round pick and we'll go back to 20. Give me your pick next year. We'll go back to 20. It ended up happening, but with the team in front of you because you jumped them. So which scenario would you rather have?
You're right. Frankly, I love Devonta Smith, and I think, there are concerns about his playing weight. There's concerns about the fact that every time he weighed in, it seemed like it was a little bit lighter. And there's a great story. If you've never heard it, you can Google it. But Andrew Hawkins is a buddy of mine. Hawk works for the NFL Network. He tells a story about how when he went in and weighed in, he actually put weights in the bottom of his shoes just so people didn't realize how light he was, because he was afraid that he would be too small and too light to get drafted. Now, I tower over Hawkins, so I understand why he felt like that, because I'm 5'9.25", and he looks small next to me. So Devonta Smith has some size concerns. I think that the wide receiver position particularly is so deep that you can go back and get a great wide receiver. In fact, I don't know that the Giants even got Kadarius Toney is good, but is he that much better than, for example, Elijah Moore or Rondell Moore? I don't know. So if you have the opportunity to move back, if you're taking a wide receiver, because I think that wide receivers, much like running back now, you can get value all over the place, you move back. I think when I look at the Eagles saying that a really good draft, it's Smith could turn out to be great, but Landon Dickerson is going to be a starter for a long time. Milton Williams is somebody that the guys I talk to love as a pick. Like I said, Gainwell is somebody that I'm really high on. So even Jacoby Stevens at LSU has a real shot to make this roster. So I think they got a lot of value. But you ask a great question, and the answer is I would have traded down and gotten future equity, especially as weird as this year's draft process was.
I keep thinking, I like the Smith pick. I like what they did. 6, 12, 10. They didn't give a whole heck of a lot. They got a first-round pick next year from Miami. But, man, there's a part of me that wonders if I stayed at 12, would I got another first-round pick and a good player at 20? Maybe I get a receiver there. Maybe I get Kwity Paye, the defensive end. Who knows? All right, that's over with, and we'll have to see how this all plays out. How it all plays out, Aaron Rodgers. Is he hosting Jeopardy? Is he playing for another team? Does he just suck it up and play in Green Bay? What say you, Jay Fitz?
I think there is zero shot in my mind that the Packers are going to let him go anywhere. And it's not because of Aaron Rodgers. It's because of Jordan Love. I've talked to 3-4 people that I think are really connected with the Packers organization, and I've gotten different answers from each of them on how the Packers feel about Jordan Love, which tells you that there's an issue. And the one thing that they can't do is have Aaron Rodgers walk now. Jordan Love comes in, doesn't look good, and then there's egg on their face even more so for the pick that they made. There's too much ego involved. The Packers would have to get a quarterback in return that they think can actually bridge the gap until they can start Jordan Love, and even that is going to be a precarious situation at best. So the Packers are going to do what they've done the entire time. The Packers have never cared about what Aaron Rodgers wants or feels. Look at their drafts. But they can also say, hey, guess what? We're coming off back-to-back 13-3 seasons where we built a pretty good roster. We're all talking about the lack of weapons, but last time I checked, those offensive weapons look pretty darn good, in part because of Aaron Rodgers, but also in part because Matt LaFleur is a coach that knows how to get the most out of those sorts of players. So if I'm the Packers organization, I'm slapping Aaron Rodgers on the butt and saying, hey, really love that you're telling us about all your feelings. We'll see you this fall. And if not, you're going to owe us $30 million in guarantees that they can go after from Aaron Rodgers while he decides to retire. I mean, there's just enough ego on both sides to be dug in. And if the Packers are looking at this situation, I don't think they can get anything back that will make the value of Aaron Rodgers okay if Jordan Love can't play. I don't think he's ready. If he's not ready, then Aaron Rodgers is stuck.
Yeah, this is a wild situation because quite frankly, I feel like, Rodgers, man, be an adult here. I get it. I don't understand this whole thing. I don't know. We're in this field where it is very ego driven and it's very competitive. Yet, I don't know. I feel like you're Aaron Rodgers, dude. You're not getting replaced because of your, has his play in his mind, is his play slipping that he feels that they might want to replace him? Is he losing that? That to me is wild that you could be that good and still feel like they drafted a guy to take my job. It's just bonkers to me. And is he afraid if you drafted a guy to take my job that he's not going to land another job? Just keep playing and just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and there's a moment too where one guy I talked to that I think is pretty well versed on all things 49ers said or All Things Packers, I should say, said the one quote he got that really eye-opening for him was that if Aaron Rodgers were to leave the team today, he wouldn't be missed in the building, not just by players and coach, or not just by coaches in front office, but also by the locker room. Like, there is a moment here where you got to ask yourself, everybody else in the locker room, there seems to be a disconnect. And Aaron Rodgers used to be really tight with his boys. Watch the Kentucky Derby, right? He's there with guys he played with 5-10 years ago. But I don't know that exists in this current locker room dynamic. So all of it is really interesting. I just think that realistically, there's enough ego involved that I put the dots together. It only makes sense that last year on draft day, they made his life hell. And I think he decided he was going to do the same thing to them this year on draft day as a way to just kick him right back in the no-no places for what they did to him a year before. And there's just too much ego involved in this. But remember, football coaches and football teams have egos too. So I don't think he's going anywhere.
All right, Jason Fitz, I want to get your take. Anthony Davis, interesting story to me. Top 5 player in the league, we keep hearing. He's playing. LeBron is not, or he's not back, and this team is still on the verge of playing in the playoff game. So is Anthony Davis really a quote-unquote franchise-type player?
I think he is, but he doesn't look right now. And I think that's also fair to say. Like, you're right that Anthony Davis coming back has not meant some sort of domination on the court, and it hasn't resulted in wins. And it's funny to me that, because we saw AD and LeBron win a championship together just a few months ago, we think all things are going to be rosy. And I've been saying that nonstop. Part of the reason that I'm starting to feel really uncomfortable with my own prediction that everything will be fine is because when they're on the court, like, AD doesn't look like himself, and nothing looks easy right now for him or for the Lakers. And that is the most stunning development, I think, of what we're seeing in the West. Because if you take the time to watch the Jazz or the Suns play, the Nuggets play, like, there's a smoothness to what they're doing. And that's something we saw last year from the Lakers, even though they didn't have as much talent last year as they have this year. The guys are not playing well together. And I think it's a real point, too, that Kyle Kuzma, who's been sort of Mr. Everything and quiet for the Lakers, he'll do whatever he's asked to do. Now we're hearing Kuzma speak out. Like, that tells you that things are just not right. And I don't know that there's an easy fix for them this season, because not only do they have to get back and knock the rust off both AD and LeBron, but they also then have to get some sort of a gel together. And it just doesn't, it's not there. It doesn't look natural. It doesn't look fun. It doesn't look easy. It doesn't look enjoyable. All of the things that we talk about great championship teams, the Lakers have none of it right now.
Yeah, it's weird because, here's a guy drafted number 1 and had a chance to be a leader of a franchise that was an 8 seed, essentially, and that was the best they could do. He went and they won the championship, and it was like, oh, see, like, he really – and now here he is playing by himself, and I'm like, maybe this guy is just like one of those players, like, is a perpetual 8 seed player by himself. That being said, I thought that's interesting because LeBron doesn't want to play in the play-in tournament, and they are a game out of that play-in tournament right now, and LeBron's going to miss the next 2 games. But what we saw yesterday, Nets-Bucks, part 2, Bucks win again. The Sixers are now a game and a half up over the Nets and 3 games over the Bucks. We are seeing in the East why the number 1 seed will be so important, because the 2 and the 3 are going to have to play the 2 or the 3 and then the 1, and that is not a route you want to take to a title.
No, you're 1,000% right. And I think that's what we're not talking enough about on the East in general. Like, there's by the time Milwaukee and whoever that two, if it's Milwaukee and Brooklyn, by the time they beat each other up and then they get themselves to that 1 seed matchup, that is going to be something. And I think that we've spent a lot of the year undervaluing the Bucks and what Drew Holiday has meant to that team for sure. But I'll also say that I really believe that we've spent a lot of this year just with our head in the sand on Philly. I mean, and I understand the argument is, well, you got to see it in the playoffs to believe it. But I'll also counter that and say, if that is the argument we're going to make, if it's only about what we've seen in the playoffs, then what are we granting all of this benefit of the doubt to the Nets for? Because we haven't seen Harden do it in the playoffs, but we just forget that narrative right now. And no team with a big 3 has ever won a championship with this lack of continuity going into the playoffs. So they haven't played enough minutes together for me to really believe in Brooklyn at all. The more I look at this, the more I think that we're like, clearly today, if you're looking right now on the court, the 2 best teams in the East are Philly and Milwaukee. I think Philly's better than Milwaukee. And by the way, it's still a matchup nightmare for Milwaukee to take on Philly. So if you're looking at Philly, you got to start feeling good about, hey, the way the West is shaking out, can Philly match up against the Clippers? Can Philly match up against the Nuggets? Heck yeah, they can. So it is time to start quietly getting excited about what the potential looks like for the Sixers.
And by the way, James Harden's still a ways away from returning to that lineup, so they need him. That's for sure. That game last night, yeah, they went back and forth scoring wise, but you can't ask Durant and Kyrie every single night. They need a third scorer, and they do not have another guy on that team currently until Harden gets back. When he's back, that's a different story. Jason Fitz, Spain and Fitz, right here on 97.3 ESPN, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Jay Fitz, take care, man.
I appreciate it. And remember, they wouldn't need 3 scores if they actually cared about playing defense. But nobody does anymore. Nobody does. Appreciate you, brother.
Ben Simmons does.
There's the one. There's the one.
And Matisse Thybulle, he does too. All right, Jay Fitz, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. When we come back, we'll get deeper into that Eastern Conference race when Paul Hudrick joins us in a preview of tonight's Sixers and Rockets game and why tonight's game is important. Yeah, tonight's game is important. By the way, I like this text. What about moving Vince Velasquez to center field? He has a cannon of an arm, and maybe a switch to center could be more beneficial to him. I don't know if he's being serious there, but it's funny enough to just give a read to. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. We're back with Inside the Sixers, Paul Hudrick on the other side. Don't go away. All right, Sports Bash is live on a Wednesday. Paul Hudrick to join us here in just a second for Inside the Sixers on why tonight's game against a bad Rockets team. No, not a bad Rockets team. The worst Rockets team. They're the worst team in the league. But why it's an important game. We'll get into that. Sports Bash brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot. Online, mattblattnissan.com. All right, Paul, we got the Sixers and the Rockets tonight. The Rockets are the worst team in the NBA. However, it is not a night to say, it's a terrible team. This might be the most important game of the season all of a sudden. All of them are, but tonight, you cannot lose this game tonight. Mathematically, the way I look at it is you can afford to lose 2 games the rest of the way. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you go 5-2, Brooklyn would have to go undefeated. I think even if Brooklyn goes undefeated at that point, you still you just have to go 5-2. Right. If you go 5-2, that's it. It's done. The match number is 5 because they're 2 up in the loss column, and they own the tiebreaker. So I believe it's any combination of 5 wins. It's the magic number. So any combination of 5 Sixers wins and Nets losses get you there. So they're in really good shape. They're sitting really pretty, like you alluded to with this game tonight. This is one of the easier ones they have. The schedule is pretty soft in general, but to me, Mike, it's like this: the more you win now, and the closer and the more you can wrap things up, you then dictate what you can do down the stretch. So if you want to give Joel Embiid a night off, if you want to give Tobias Harris a night off, if you want to give Seth Curry, Danny Green, if you want to give any of those guys a night off, the sooner you take care of business and win games and get closer to that, and check points off of that magic number of 5, the better off you'll be and the more control you'll have going into the final games of the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, it was it was big for the Bucks to sweep that series because it puts you in a spot where the Sixers have won 5 in a row. The Bucks have won 3 in a row, so they can't gain any ground. And yet the Nets have lost ground with the 2 losses there. So the Bucks really did you a solid. But what did we take from the 2-game set between the Bucks and the Nets?
It's hard, Mike, because the Nets are still missing a pretty darn big piece with James Harden still out of the lineup. I think if anything, that's what we take away, right? Is that 1, the Nets are having an awful lot of trouble staying healthy. And 2, because of that, it's going to hurt them. It's going to hurt their cohesiveness. I saw, after the game, Steve Nash even talked about that, how they're having like problem solving issues late in games, which is not great when you're a team that's expecting to win an NBA championship. That's not ideal to be here in May now. Cause now it's to the point where, the playtime is over. It's getting to the point where you have to figure these things out. There's not a whole lot of time to do it. So the Nets had 2 big games. Again, I do want to preface, no James Harden, who has been outstanding for them when he has been in the lineup, to the point where people were talking about him possibly entering the MVP race before he got hurt. But at the same time, it's clear that they have some cohesiveness issues, and that's going to be a huge benefit to the Sixers and the Bucks, who, if the Sixers get the 1 seed, inevitably it seems like the Nets and the Bucks are going to play each other. So that's setting up to be a really intriguing second-round series.
Yeah, it's funny because I went through a couple scenarios today. We've been talking about this whole play-in situation. Right now, if Philly was the 1, you would have a spot where you could likely play Washington in round number 1, and that doesn't seem to be fun either.
No, it's really not. The Russell Westbrook trade for most of this season has looked like an absolute disaster from the Wizards' perspective. But now the guy's playing great. You got to give him his due. I mean, he's been playing really, really well. The whole team, he's really kind of willed them, put them on their backs. And then, let's not forget about Bradley Beal, who has given the Sixers fits throughout his career. So yeah, that's not a real. Listen. The Sixers would win that matchup. Like, no, in a 7-game series, the Sixers would absolutely beat the Washington Wizards, but that's not fun either. Like, that would not be a fun 7-game series to have to go with against a guy like Russell Westbrook, who is going to go 100 miles an hour and give everything he's got in a playoff series, and to also have to try to contain Bradley Beal for a 7-game series. That's not a fun scenario. With all that said, I don't see a possible scenario where the Wizards could upset them. But yeah, not fun, not ideal. But listen, it's also the playoffs, Mike. You're going to have to play tough teams.
Yep.
You're going to face tests along the way, and that's why you need the 1 seed so that you're setting yourself up on a good path and quote unquote easier path to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and potentially the finals.
Yeah, I mean, you got Rockets tonight. You're off tomorrow, back home. Pelicans. All right, they gave you problems the last time. That's not a very good basketball team, though. Pistons are horrible. Pacers are playing in that play-in scenario, but they're pretty locked in there. You got the Heat and then the 2 against the Magic. So, as we said, you can afford to kind of stub your toe twice. If you only lose twice, you're in pretty good shape. So, as you mentioned, Paul, I think it's a good thing to point out. There's a good opportunity to get your guys some rest down this final stretch of games, and how important that would be playing 5 games in 7 days this week. And 2 of them that you had to kind of have a bare-knuckle fight to get through.
Right. And I think that that's what Doc Rivers, I would think, would be emphasizing. Let's just take care of this. Like, let's just get it done. Because we have this opportunity. We control everything. Like, the Sixers, like, make no mistake, they control.
Quick. I will say this, Paul. I went through Brooklyn and Milwaukee's schedule. They don't play very many difficult games the rest of the way either.
Well, the Nets actually do have a couple tricky games.
Dallas and Denver.
Yeah, so they definitely clearly have the 2 toughest games of any of the 3 teams still on their schedule. So that's nothing to sneeze at. And is James Harden going to play again in the regular season? Like, I have my doubts. It seems like he's it's a pretty serious hamstring, and it's really lingering. So that's another big factor, I think, for the Nets. But yeah, it's like I said, it's all in their hands. The magic number is 5. Just take care of the games that you're supposed to win. Starting tonight in Houston. The Pelicans clearly. I mean, the Pelicans gave them problems in New Orleans. I think they took that team too lightly. If anything, that might bode well for the Sixers now, because all Doc Rivers has to do is point to that game in New Orleans and said, "Hey, remember when you kind of slept on this team and they punched you in the mouth and beat you?" That should be pretty easy motivation. The fact that it's at home, Mike, too, I think makes a huge difference. As you mentioned, the 5 and 7 nights, this weird, funky road trip where you went from, San Antonio to Chicago, now to Houston. I think being back home, I think they'll be refreshed, and I think they'll be in a better place. So, as long as they stay healthy through this game. So, yeah, I'm just going to keep saying it. It's just that they have everything right in front of them to get the 1 seed, and that's been the goal all season long. They are healthy right now. All the 5 starters are only 1 guy in the injury report tonight, and that's Furkan Korkmaz. So they are healthy, and there is just no excuse. They got to just sew this thing up as soon as possible. Yeah,
and it's funny because I've been stressing that I know this regular season is kind of boring down the stretch here, and it seems like because typically we'd be playing playoff basketball by now. You'd be in round number 2 by this stage of the season, so I get it. But this is not time to start getting bored and bail on this team. They have got to tighten up and win this group of games. That being said, they've won 5 in a row. If they won out, they'd be entering the playoffs on a 12-game win streak. It's like one of those things where, like, man, you almost want to see them stub their toe one more time here so you're not entering on a 12-game win streak, right? Or no? Go in on a 12-gamer.
I think if they go in on a 12-game win streak, I would be perfectly okay with that. Just it's good to ride that momentum. I understand what you mean. Like they haven't faced much adversity since that 4-game losing streak where, guys were in and out of the lineup. Really in the second half, that's really the only true adversity they've really faced. They played really, really, really well in the second half of the season. So to me, I think it's a good thing. I win as many as you can, go in on a high note, get that confidence up. The starting 5 has played really well together, keep playing really well together, and force the other teams to kind of knock your momentum off. Like you kind of already talked about the Wizards. Look how good they're playing. They might be coming into Philadelphia. If they go and they win, they're going to be coming in on a hot streak. So if you have a hot streak of your own, that's probably bodes better than, coming in cold and having to face a team that's been playing kind of a playoff level of basketball and playing really well at that. So I would say win as many as you can. I definitely think, though, Mike, there's going to be opportunities if they take care of what they need to take care of. There's going to be opportunities to the rest guys. And I think Doc Rivers will take advantage of that because, listen, Danny Green has had a hip issue all season long that he's been kind of nursing. Seth Curry admitted to us the other night that, Yeah, I feel good right now because, we blew teams out for a week and I got to not play in the fourth quarter. So that has helped me. Or we already know Joel Embiid and his injury history. And, he's still a little dinged up. Tobias Harris with the knee, he's kind of looked kind of in and out of health-wise. So I would think it would behoove them to win these games. And if we're going to say, should they go on a 12-win winning streak or rest some guys? Yeah, I think resting guys is the better scenario. But at the same time, if they can go on a winning streak, I think that would only serve them well.
Yeah, and by the way, Harris, I thought 35 minutes the other night looked more like himself. He was very efficient, 10 of 13, 21 points in the game, 9 rebounds. That was a much better feeling of like, all right, I feel better about Harris. The one thing I'll ask is, Hill in that game only played 13 minutes as a reserve. Is this a kind of a – I can't imagine this is how he's going to use the bench with Hill only 13 minutes.
I just think Doc was not pleased with the way the bench was played in the second. I mean, he said that, and it's true. I mean, I think if you watch that game,
they're up by 17. Come on, guys!
Yeah.
Like he said in the pregame that, I'm comfortable playing all 11 guys. That's why we don't mind playing the back-to-back. And it's like, this bench twice now has made your starters come back in the game.
Yeah, and it's funny because historically that is like a bench player weird thing on the road. If you look at like variance from benches at home versus on the road, and that's not just it's every team. Bench players tend to play better at home. Whatever the reason is, whatever the science is, I don't know, but that's just like a statistical fact. So that's part of it. These all bench lineups, and I really hope Doc Rivers just said that because he told us, he said, I'm not afraid to go to the all bench lineup if that's what you're asking. And listen, that's great that you want to pump your bench up, you want to pump your guys up. But we should not see that. That should not. You have 3 players, 2 guys that are all-stars, 1 guy that's an MVP, 1 guy that might be the defensive player of the year, and then you have another guy who's a borderline all-star. Those guys got to play 35-plus minutes a night in the playoffs. So if you do the math, and then even Danny Green, I think Danny Green's got to play 30-plus minutes a night. Seth, I think, is the only guy who I think in the starting lineup where his minutes are going to vary a little bit, depending on matchup, depending on how he's shooting, and depending on how defensively that's working out. But you have 4 guys that are going to play big minutes. So there is really no reason for you to go to an all bench lineup in the postseason. I don't see it. I want to hope. I hope that Doc Rivers was really just trying to pump those bench guys up. Because listen, they're going to need them. There's going to be spots where George Hill or Shake Milton or Matisse Thybulle or Dwight Howard, where they're going to have a moment where they're going to need one of those guys to really step up and play a big part of a game. So I understand wanting to pump them up, but at the same time, that all bench lineup to me, I mean, that cannot happen in the postseason.
Yeah, although I go back to when I was a kid and the Sixers had Barkley, Mahorn, Dawkins, Hawkins, and Jaminski. They played 1 guy off the bench. They played Ron Anderson, and that was it. You couldn't name the next guy. So you're right. Like these starters, you get to the playoffs, it's almost like you got to go in with the mindset that I'm playing the full 48, and if I get 6 to 8 minutes to sit, that's great.
I think once they get to the second round, I think that's when you're going to see like Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons. They're going to average around 40 minutes in the second round. They almost have to. They're your 3 best players, so they have to play those big minutes. And as I mentioned before, I think Danny Green, how valuable he's proven himself to be, I think he's got to play big time minutes.
You have a guy that can come in and give you good, solid 15 minutes of defense playing Thybulle.
Oh, 100%. And then George Hill also, plays solid defense, gives you extra ball handling, and can shoot the basketball. And Shake Milton can get hot. Shake Milton, I think, too, that's the other thing I think about with like a guy like Shake Milton, who has played predominantly in all bench lineups. I think he can be better when he's mixed in with starting caliber players. And we've kind of seen that when he's played with with Ben Simmons or with Joel Embiid. It's elevated his game, which isn't rocket science. It's just when you're playing with better players, you play better.
Yeah, it's just the problem has been Hill came back and Simmons was out, and so they haven't got the chance to really, I guess, utilize that. The one last thing, Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers at Paul Hudrick tonight. They take on the worst team in the league, the Rockets. And they are legitimately the worst team.
And banged up, too.
Yeah, record-wise and aesthetically. They are bad. Is Joel Embiid coming out the other night and saying, he wants to work on passing out of the doubles, and it almost felt like he was forcing himself to pass on some of the. Didn't you feel that way?
No, I thought his comments were really interesting and really honest, very candid, like basically saying, I'm good. I know I'm good. When I get to the playoffs, I know I'm going to be able to drop whatever 30 points a game. What we need is I need to get Tobias Harris going. I need to get Ben Simmons going. I need Seth Curry and Danny Green to shoot the lights out. And I need to be able to find them because, and I do feel like, I felt like the San Antonio game, the reason he scored a lot in that game is because they needed him to. Because, the other guys weren't playing that well, and he sensed it, and he kind of got going. Yeah. The Bulls game, when he got in, listen, Tobias played really well in that fourth quarter. The other guys were hitting. Seth Curry and Danny Green were both hitting against Chicago. So Joel Embiid didn't have to kind of assert his will and score. And I think, as weird as it sounds, Mike, I'm on board with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we all know what Joel Embiid is. We know how dominant he can be when he's on. He's a legit MVP caliber player. So, like he said, they're going to aggressively double, triple, whatever team, in the playoffs. That's going to happen every single night. So for him to kind of have that level of thinking to be like, you know what? Let me almost work on this now. And let me get these guys confident and feeling good so that when we're in the playoffs, I feel good to get those guys the ball. And those guys feel good that when they have the ball, they can score. So it was candid. Maybe some people don't like it. Maybe some people view it as, he's kind of taking it easy, but I'm on board with it. I think it's smart. And it's also putting less of a burden on him from a health perspective, but he's also still playing, if that makes sense. So he's keeping himself in shape. He's staying on the floor, but he's not overexerting himself. So he still has stuff left in the tank.
And what I think it also shows, Paul, is he has a level of confidence in the surrounding guys where he says, you know what, I want to throw that pass because I know that Danny Green can make that shot and Seth Curry can make that shot and Tobias Harris. Where in the past, I have to force something because I'm not so sure Josh Richardson or Al Horford are making that shot. So I think that's another level of confidence that he has in this roster that he's, a part of now, which is good.
100%. He said that really, I think maybe even in the first or second week of the season, he said that he already felt better about when I get double teamed, I got guys that I know are going to make shots. You mentioned, Seth Curry, the ridiculous start he got off to. I'm sure that felt really good. And I think too, Mike, Seth Curry has been very up and down, and shooters kind of traditionally are, right? I mean, they go through stretches where they're on fire, feels like they can't miss, and then they go through slumps. But I do think a part of Seth's issues have been, the bout with COVID, where he really struggled to kind of get his wind back and really get back into good cardio shape. And then he had, a leg injury, he had the ankle injury and then the hip in the same leg, which I'm sure was a kind of a compensation injury. So I just think it's been a combination for him where he just hasn't been 100% healthy. So you see when he is healthy, how good he can be and how dynamic he kind of makes their offense. Not just for Joel Embiid, but for Ben Simmons as well. You see that two-man game kind of developing. You saw the one play in Chicago was one of their prettier plays of the season where it was kind of a give and go situation with him and Ben Simmons. Then he finds Ben Simmons for that lob. So yeah, I think 100% Joel Embiid, of all the years he has felt good about his supporting cast, there's no question to me he feels more confident this season than he ever has.
He's Paul Hudrick at Paul Hudrick, and the Sixers take the Rockets on tonight. Pelicans Friday, Pistons on Saturday. So we got a bunch to discuss the rest of this week during Inside the Sixers. Paul will be back on Friday, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Paul Hudrick, you look good, man.
I'm doing my best, Mike. Thanks.
Appreciate it, bud. Yeah, man. All right, let's go and take a look at that tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. That game's tip-off coverage begins at 8 p.m. And, of course, Tom McGinnis on the call. The great Tom McGinnis. Sports Bash brought to you by Clark's Moving Storage in South Jersey. For your next local or long-distance move, Clark's Moving Storage is your first call. They're dependable and always show up online. clarksmoving.net. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. If you're watching the show, appreciate you. If you're listening on the radio, always appreciate you. With a text, 609-403-0973. I got a beautiful text, by the way, and I want to give that guy a shout-out when we come back here. Just a touching text message this morning that I got when I got to the building. 9:46. So I was talking to Hudrick about the Sixers. It was the 89-90 Sixers. It's kind of like the first team that, like, not that I remember. I mean, by 89, I was like 12. But, like, the first team that I really got into and, like, was really, like, heartbroken when they lost. And that team was 53-29. I think they got knocked out by the Bulls, if memory serves. I feel like they got knocked out by the Bulls almost every year. You know, when Jordan was coming up, they would play the Bulls, or they got knocked out by they lost to the Bulls. Yeah, they beat the Cavs in the first round. Then they played the Bulls, and they would lose. And that was pretty much how that went for a while there. Jim Lynam was the coach. And I was saying before, like, they had literally their 5 starters. Their 5 starters were Barkley, who played 39 minutes a game. 39! He averaged 39 minutes a game, Barkley. Johnny Dawkins averaged 35 minutes a game. Hersey Hawkins averaged 35 minutes a game. Mike Jaminski, the center, averaged 32 minutes a game. And Rick Mahorn averaged 30 minutes a game. Ron Anderson came off the bench and averaged 27 minutes a game. And after that, I mean, Derek Smith played less than 20 minutes a game. Jay Vincent played he played 15 minutes a game. Scotty Brooks played 13 minutes a game. Bob Thornton came in and banged for 10 minutes. I mean, there was no bench. You just played. The starters just went out there and played. That's what the Sixers essentially are going to need to ask their players. And that's in the regular season. I would like to see what their per-game totals were in the playoffs with that team. Here we go. Charles Barkley in the playoffs averaged 42 minutes a game. Hersey Hawkins averaged 42 minutes a game. Johnny Dawkins averaged 38. Jaminski averaged 34. Mahorn averaged 34. And Ron Anderson came off the bench and averaged 25. That's what the Sixers are going to need. You're going to need that down the stretch. You're going to need that type of performance from your starters. If your bench doesn't contribute similarly to the way your bench didn't contribute the other night, it contributed to your starters having to come back in the game. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. That's the text board number if you want to jump in. Video, of course, you can always leave your stream message wherever you're watching, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. And we'll continue to pop those up on the screen throughout the show. One thing in this Sixer season that's been interesting, as Paul was alluding to, is kind of watching the evolution of Joel Embiid. And I thought he played one of his weaker games the other night. He only scored 13 points, had 10 rebounds, but he is trying to work on some things like in-game now, working on passing out of the double team, all that kind of stuff. It's one of those things where Embiid, much like Giannis Antetokounmpo, we played the clip for you. He's like, hey, winning a regular season game, not that big of a deal. We'll see what happens in the playoffs. And it's why I wish Ben Simmons, as much as I think, look, he is such an important piece to this puzzle. Now, you talk about a guy, efficiency, 6 of 7, got to the line, was 3 of 5, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 15 points, plus 29. That doesn't excite a lot of people, but without Ben Simmons doing that, they're just not the same team. They really aren't. You couldn't substitute another player in the league that does what Ben Simmons does for this particular team. There might be better players. James Harden's a better player than Ben Simmons in terms of, yeah, he scores a lot. But for this roster and what this team needs and what this team does, Ben Simmons is almost irreplaceable. It's why what Giannis said the other night, you would wish Ben Simmons would just say, you know what? If we win this game tonight, now it's a different situation with this Sixers team because they do need to win these games. But my point is, if they're clinched, if they've already clinched, I'd like to see Ben Simmons in a couple of those games say, you know what, we've already clinched. Let me just go out there and play freely. Because I still think there are times when he just doesn't play freely. I think there's times where Ben Simmons he has so much more to add. He has another layer of basketball that he can add to his game. Just think about that. It's crazy. So, as we mentioned, 6 games left. They're a game and a half up on Brooklyn. Got to have them. Got to have them starting tonight. It's got to happen. Absolutely can't. I mean, you can't lose a game tonight. Just can't. Absolutely can't. It would be disastrous. It'd be the worst loss in literally. I couldn't come up with a worse loss if you lost this game tonight. So we got it for you tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage starts at 8 o'clock. I do want to read this text message I got today. I thought it was probably one of the nicest things that I've ever gotten in the time that I've done this show. I mean, yeah, I get a lot of people who say nice things. I get a lot of people who say some nasty things. It comes with the job. It's okay. It doesn't matter. But this is maybe one of the nicest things I've ever gotten. And it's from a gentleman named Bob. And Bob, I got your text. I appreciate this text message. It really made my day. It says, Mike, I'm 72 years old, and I've been a sports fan my whole life. My mom would listen to Bill Mazer on WFAN way back in the day when I was a kid, and I was hooked. Then Tom Brookshire started on WIP in the early 80s along with Howard Eskin on WMMR, and I couldn't get enough. My wife and I raised our family in Williamstown and our summer home in Ocean City. We both retired in 2012 down the shore, but she passed away in 2015. Men are not supposed to outlive their spouses. It really sucks. Mike, I just want to thank you for the excellent job you do every day. You touch more lives more than you'll ever know. Signed, Bob, and I'll keep his last name private. But Bob, that was one of the more touching things, period. In all the years that I've done this show, I have never heard something quite as nice as that. There are a lot of just nasty, just absolute lowlifes out there that for whatever reason feel that it's some sort of fun to hide their identity and say whatever they want to say about the guy on the radio, which we understand. Hey, you're the guy on the radio. A lot of people wish they had this position. So what do we do? We'll just start saying stuff because, nobody can figure out who I am on Twitter or my text message anyway. But Bob, you saying that was probably something that not only made my day, made the entire month, or made this job sometimes, which can be, you're dealing with a lot of people who are not the nicest people in the world. But knowing that there are Bobs out there is why you do the job, right? That I can keep Bob company and other people like Bob company throughout the day. If for 4 hours, if this is what gets you through the day and you're having tough days, I am 100% all about that. And that is the reason why you do the job. It's not for the guy who thinks he knows more than the guy on the radio, or the guy who doesn't agree with what you say, or the guy who doesn't like your opinion on something. That guy needs to get a life. You know why? Because it's about having the companionship of someone to just talk you through your day sometimes. Hey, I might not agree with you all the time, but I just enjoy the conversation. That's why we do the job. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. And that, Bob, made my day. So thank you for being a part of it. Coming up, football at 4. Jeff Mosher is here. We created football at 4 because we love talking football. We do it every day at 4 o'clock, and we will continue to do so. Eagles, and we'll get into the NFL conversations in the offseason. Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast joins me on the other side. What kind of intel does he have? I want to ask him, why not Steven Nelson? What about Richard Sherman? How about Rashad Breeland? There's a couple veteran corners out there. Will the Eagles go down that route? The latest on Zach Ertz and more on the Sports Bash. All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. So the roster building part 2, we had free agency, we had the draft. Now what? Where do these guys fit in? Jeff Mosher is here. We'll talk about that and some other things that some of our listeners have been posting in the chat throughout the show, on the text board as well. Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops Thursday morning tomorrow at 6 a.m. with a freshie on the Eagles offseason. What's up, Moshe?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Always good, man.
Awesome.
I get a lot of questions the last couple of days. So the Eagles didn't draft a corner other than McPherson in round 4. They obviously don't have a corner starting caliber on the roster. Roseman suggested that, hey, we traded for a guy in 2017 in August. Do they go that route again, or is there an available corner? I keep getting asked. Steve Nelson, Richard Sherman, Brashad Breeland. There are a couple veteran corners. Do they bring one of those guys in, or is a trade more likely? Or is there a diamond in the rough, a Graylin Arnold or a Michael Jacquet that they like a lot more than all of us do?
Well, I mean, they drafted a kid in the 4th round that they like a lot, and Zach McPherson. And certainly right now you look at it and say he's going to get a heck of an opportunity to be able to prove that, you know, he was drafted there for a reason and that they liked some of his skill set that he's got. Do I still think Howie will wind up getting someone a little bit more accomplished between now and the start of the season? Sure. They're cash strapped now. We all know that. Casey Hayward just signed with the Raiders, I think, a day ago. Guys like Steven Nelson and Richard Sherman, older teams are waiting for the price to go down, I'm sure, but they're still going to sign for a price that the Eagles are going to have a tough time competing with unless they want to try to sign a guy, give him a very, very low base salary, and then take that signing bonus and spread it out over so many years. How many times has Howie already done that? And it's great to say the cap goes up every year, but if your number of players who are old and not so good that are guaranteed money year after year, that's less money that you have to spend in any given year if you have to cut these guys. And most likely, anybody that you're signing right now, you're not sure is going to be on the team in the next year or two. So it's a difficult position they're in. I think once they get through the Zach Ertz hurdle and clear some money there, it might help them out a little bit. But still, I think they would rather be young than old, and they would rather look for an opportunity to trade for someone like a Ronald Darby that we've talked about, who has some years of control and is cost controlled at the time that you get him. And there's a bunch of new coaches. There's new schemes. That's what happened to Darby, right? He was in a scheme when Sean McDermott took over there that was different than, I think, when who was the defensive coordinator for that? Was it Schwartz or was it Rex Ryan? I don't even remember. But
Rex Schwartz was there, then Rex Ryan became the head coach and took over.
Right. So so I'm sure this scouting staff will be really good and diligent at looking for potential players who are decent at the position but may not fit the scheme anymore.
Yeah, there's one other, Garyon Conley is another guy who's a free agent. He was a first-round pick a couple of years ago. He's been one of those guys who's had injury issues. He feels like an Eagles signing. Injury issues, had potential, get him in our system, and we can get our hands on him. That to me, Garyon Conley, for all the people listening and watching, sounds like the type of guy they would make a move on. Cheap, prove it to me.
Yeah, he might be too young, though. He's still only been in the league a few years.
45,
if he was 29, I would say that exactly. But there will be someone. I'm sure of it. But you would like to, real quick, you would like to at least, though, see if McPherson can claim this job. I mean, you would like to see, you're not going to have a first round pick in a Pro Bowler at every position. So you would like to see if this kid can compete and win that job out of camp.
Right. That would be, I mean, I guess an ultimate win is if your 4th round pick came in and he was the guy that you say, we've got to put him on the field. On the flip side, you might be saying, if we have to play our 4th round pick, we might be in some trouble on that side of the field because, he might not be ready to play every snap out there. You'd like to see that he can get on the field, but a lot of this is they don't really have an outside corner on the roster. They don't really even have a guy, Craig James. We don't know, Michael Jacquet, Graylin Arnold. I mean, there's a bevy of guys that I'm probably forgetting that I don't think any of us think are ready to be a starting outside corner in this league. Heck, Kayvon Seymour was doing concrete pouring for 3 years before they finally picked him up last year.
Yeah, he's a real Kurt Warner in the making, I'm sure.
Right?
Stocking shelves. But no, I mean, you're right. And I think, and I know the Eagles have not released yet their list of undrafted free agent signings. And some of the names that you reported had seen, I don't think they've signed a corner. So the question is, well, why wouldn't you at least sign one on a corner? And the answer is, well, you've got 5 guys who pretty much qualify as undrafted rookie free agent type corners anyway, whether it's Jaquette, Graylin Arnold, the guy Kayvon Seymour, or Shaquille Taylor, who actually wasn't undrafted, but is basically bouncing around here. So it's not like they need a bunch of bodies. They got bodies. They need talented players. So we'll see what happens.
Correct. All right. So I want to get your thoughts on, you guys talk to Greg Cosell regularly and post-draft here, and kind of pick your brain on some of the things that stood out about the way the Eagles might use Landon Dickerson here. Where do they see him? How does he factor into this season, if at all? I know Howie said they anticipate him being ready.
Right.
Do they look at him as a center, a guard, as a kind of depth guy all the way across the line? Because Nick Sirianni did indicate, he even played some tackle too, but we do view him as an inside guy. So what's something that Greg Cosell maybe says about where they think about this kid?
Well, he does have tackle size at 6'6", 325, but not just not athletic enough on the outside to really, I'm sure he could play it in a pinch and hold his own. He almost has a Runyon-esque type of skill set. So if he had to, you'd probably want to play him at right tackle instead of left. Although nowadays, the way they have pass rushers on each side being similar, it's probably not that much of a difference. But he's much better as a center or a guard. I mean, he'll eventually be a center. The question is, can he get on the field this year? I don't think that they're going to. And look, as we sit here today, anything's on the table, right? Because they're in such a transition. I think ideally they want to bring Isaac Seumalo back at left guard. Jason Kelsey's coming back at center, and it seems like Brandon Brooks is safe right now at right guard. And maybe is there a deal to be made where they can trade Brandon Brooks to make room for Landon Dickerson? It's possible. The only issue is, and we're going to talk about this a lot in the years to come, he's one of those guys that has so much guaranteed money down, next year, the year after, that if you were to get rid of him this year, that drains into your current salary cap. So it's going to be hard to move him and have the space to take on the money that's going to drain in to this year's cap. So I'm not saying it can't be done. They obviously can move Zach Ertz to clear room. They can restructure Derek Barnett's contract if they feel comfortable doing that to clear some room to be able to inherit it. But, they may just want Brandon Brooks to stay to continue to develop the quarterback and the offense and just assume that someone's going to get hurt and Dickerson can get in there. But it will be difficult if no one gets – you don't want Landon Dickerson, who's – I think it's fair to say he's got so much toll on his body from the injuries. You don't want to sit there wasting time on the bench doing nothing if you think he can play right now. So this will be one of those discussions I'm sure they have at training camp as to, is he back? Is he playing at training camp? Is he ready to compete? And is he that good that we really do need to make a move to clear room for him?
Yeah, that would be interesting. We pretty much feel there's going to be a battle for left tackle between Dillard and Mailata, right? Those two guys will battle there. Do they have a legit battle for the left guard spot between Dickerson and Seumalo, and then use Seumalo as kind of the swing guy, not swing tackle, guard and center?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that only because they've committed to Seumalo for the long haul. He's a pretty good player. He's still young. I would think it's Brooks that they would have to make the decision on him because of his age and his injury history of whether it's worthwhile holding on to him or just kind of trying to find a taker.
Wow. I feel like, I don't know, maybe I just view Brooks as he is a guy that you feel pretty good about when he's back. I know he's got the injury, but he came back from this injury once and was an all-pro coming back from this injury. I know coming back from it twice, but man, I'm not counting him out the way he looked coming off this injury. And if he's back healthy, he's one of the best in the game.
Yeah, but unfortunately, this is not a discussion that revolves around talent. It's about age, it's about injury history, and about money first and foremost, and what he's owed compared to being able to have your nice cost-controlled left guard in Seumalo, and then an even nicer cost-controlled rookie in Dickerson be able to play right guard, and then you move that big contract. Because I mean, do you have to? You do have to wonder. I know he's come back from several injuries and he's reshaped his body, but can he still be their right guard for 3 more years? I'm talking about Brandon Brooks now. Is it worth having that? That's a question for Howie and his staff to come up to answer.
I think this is interesting because if he's on this team and they play, if he's on the roster at the start of the season and he plays, and then the team has success, it's kind of hard to, if he plays really well, it's kind of hard to say, hey, we're going to move on from you because you were a part of the success. We already have you under contract. They have him and Johnson under contract for, I think, 2 and 3 more years.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a trade deadline move. I think it would be more of a training camp type move to get, what you can for him at that time. You're right. If you're doing at the deadline, I mean, you could see how the team is doing. And if it's not, here's what I have trouble kind of answering questions with, because a lot of people are this is supposed to be a developmental year anyway. I'm not expecting the Eagles to win the Super Bowl. I'm just trying to see Jalen Hurts' development. And then yet the same people will be like, what are you doing at cornerback? What do you mean Zach McPherson's going to be your starter on the outside? He's a 4th round pick. He's not ready. And then I'll go back, but wait, you just said that it was a developmental year. So can you pick a side to you? I'm just saying when you take the temperature of the fan, they're completely accepting of development on one area, but completely intolerant of development in another area. So I don't know how to answer it when people say that. But
no, but I think if you've listened to Howie, read between the lines a little bit, he was on with John Clark on his podcast and said, no, we're not rebuilding. We're retooling. And, Sal Powell was on 2 Fridays ago and said the same thing, that, inside that building, he's been told that they think they can win the division this year, that they're closer than people outside the building think, which tells me they feel that the injuries were a big reason why this team struggled. And of course the quarterback play. And guess what? They remedied that. They got rid of the guy.
They did get rid of it. Now, we have no idea if they upgraded. We just know they got rid of it, and they got rid of the coaching staff. And so there's a lot of newness. I think that also speaks to the fact that, look, no team has won the division 2 years in a row since 2003, 2004 Eagles, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going on 17 years now, which is amazing if you think about it. But yeah, there's no one team in the NFC East that you look at and you go, damn, that's a heck of a team right there. I mean, anybody can win it. I still like Washington. I liked them last year. I like them again this year because I love the young front seven that they have. And I think they're building the right way for the first time in a long time. Of course, they can always screw it up. But yeah, obviously Dallas, with Dak coming back, is going to be pretty difficult to beat at times too. But no one is unbeatable in that division. So the Eagles shouldn't have to concede anything at this moment.
Let me get your opinion. I was having a conversation with somebody about this. This is what I love about post-draft is now you have the guys on the team and you're moving forward, and it's like, all right, how do I picture this guy? Devonta Smith is obviously making the team. That's not a question. Jalen Reagor is obviously making the team. After him, is anybody else definitively making the team, or do you feel that you've got a big battle for 3, 4, 5, and if they keep a 6 wide receiver?
No, that's something Adam and I talked about on the podcast that dropped Monday morning, is that there is going to be great competition at wide receiver. You're right. Smith makes the team. Jalen Reagor makes the team. As we sit here today, it's hard to see Greg Ward not making the team because of his production and his leadership, and he's probably the elder statesman, as scary as it is to say, of the wide receivers. But let's face it, he's not the most explosive guy, and they want to be a more vertical team. And if you have if Travis Fulgham kind of comes back better and can play that X, then that's going to move Devontae and Jalen into the slot a little bit more and give you that vertical element. And then Hightower and Watkins can play the Z, the outside Z, because they have speed. They can also play the slot. So do I think that Greg Ward is not going to make the team? No. But do I think he's competing like he should every year because he's that kind of a guy that you're always looking to upgrade over? Yeah, I think that's fair to say. So there's a lot of competition that will be after the. I think Fulgham would have to really, because he's got size, Mike. He's the only one that has decent size. He'd have to really have a bad training camp not to make it. But after that, it's a nice little game of who's who. I mean, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I forgot to mention him too. He's got size as well. He's got a new look. If I'm him, I feel like I have a little bit of a reprieve. There's a new staff. It's a new mentality. It's supposed to be a very wide receiver friendly coaching staff. He is a natural X, which they don't really have with some size. So he'll get an opportunity. The only thing is, if he doesn't play well enough to be in your top 3, he's not a special teams guy. So he's not going to make the team this year as a not great second round pick who's a fringe roster player. I can't see him being the 5th or 6th wide receiver because he's really not a producer on special teams.
Yeah, that's the question, I guess, is at what point now do you get to the point where I can't just keep you because you were a second round pick? And quite frankly, John Hightower, Quez Watkins, who were drafted last year, I guess if they're not part of the plans, they're not any, especially Hightower. Watkins didn't, he was inactive a lot last year, but Hightower got a lot of playing time relative to his draft position. I would imagine if this coaching staff says that, we're not married to you either.
Well, yeah, I mean, what the coaching staff saw last year when they evaluated the tape, right, was a guy who showed the ability to get open on specific downfield routes, but only caught about 50% of the balls that were put there for him to catch. So, and maturity issues, as many rookies deal with. I mean, it's a tough acclimation, and last year was even tougher because of the pandemic, but no excuses year 2. You got to have learned that, put it behind you, and show that you can be reliable down the field when the quarterback throws you the ball.
What's in your mind the deal with Ertz? Is he here? Do they just say, you know what, we feel like we're better with him? I mean, Howie made the comment that, hey, is there a higher possibility that he's gone?
No, I still think he's gone. I think this feels like, excuse me, how the Carson Wentz situation lingered out and people started to think, well, maybe Carson Wentz isn't going to be traded. And whenever there was a public statement about it, it's, Carson Wentz is our quarterback. He's a big part of our team. He's like one of our fingers. Now you're hearing Zach Ertz and how valuable he is and productive. At the end of the day, I don't see him being back with the team.
Yeah,
I don't think he wants to be. So,
well, and that's another interesting part of this. I mean, because salary wise, they got themselves under the cap. Do they just feel like, hey, his contract gone anyway, we might as well just keep him for the last year?
Yeah, but they got to pay those rookies. So, I don't know how far under the cap they are, and you always have to make sure you have some money in case you have to sign some players or trade for a player in the middle of camp or season. So, if you're not, if Dallas Goedert's your number 1 tight end and you're running more of a purer West Coast offense, you're not 12 personnel heavy anymore, and look at all the investment they put in at wide receiver. It would be ridiculous now just to be a 2 tight end offense with what they've got. So it just doesn't compute. It doesn't match up. I don't see him being on the team.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess it's interesting. I think we brushed on this Monday a little bit, but if Ertz is part of a trade for a corner, much like Jordan Matthews was.
Yeah, it would have to be Ertz and probably some draft compensation to get a corner, depending on who that cornerback is. If it's a 1-year guy, maybe you do a one for like an Ertz for a veteran guy who's got 1 year left. Darby had 2 left plus the ability to franchise, so it was almost like 3 when they traded for him. So the Bills weren't just going to take a Jordan Matthews on 1-year deal. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They weren't just going to accept Jordan Matthews out of it. They needed something that was a little bit more worthwhile and valuable to them.
All right. Well, I, for one, am looking forward to some of these battles at training camp. I think they have some interesting ones. We just hit on just a few of them. Left tackle, we threw out there. We didn't really break it down much, but left tackle is going to be one. Wide receiver room, very interesting. I'm interested to see what they do with Gainwell. I guess him and Boston Scott now. Now, does Boston Scott now have a chance to get cut? So that's just on the offensive side of the ball, and I'm sure there's some other things that we're missing. But we got plenty more football at 4. The new Inside the Birds podcast drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Make sure on your way to work you check that out. Inside the Birds, 6 a.m. tomorrow. And then Adam Kaplan is here on tomorrow's edition of Inside the Birds. Football at 4. We'll get his first opinion on this new draft class and some of the things that have come out. And since then, fist pump to you there, Tom Donahue. Boom. Who apparently felt the need to say that it wasn't a big deal. He didn't even know he was on the camera. So I guess the Eagles are in like, all right, we got to do something because Roseman saying it's not a big deal isn't enough.
Exactly. Well, and I just to add, I was told that, and not by a propaganda source at all, but I was told that Tom felt pretty bad about that. I mean, most people don't even remember or didn't know that Donahoe was working for the team still until that happened. He's a very under the behind the scenes. He's not about him. It's never been his style. And unfortunately that happened and it made it seem the opposite.
Yeah. I said that the other day. I said, I forgot he was even with the team still.
Yeah. That's what I said. He's kind of been an under the radar guy. So I know he's not happy with how that got perceived.
All right. And by the way, I will bring what I'm talking about up. There was a tweet out there by an NFL reporter that apparently, got the news that Tom Donahue said, hey, not a big deal. This happens a lot. I'll give you more details on that. Coming up, he's Jeff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Moshe. See you, man.
All right, my brother. Take care.
All right. And, of course, this hour of the show is brought to you by Prop Swap. And, look, Prop Swap, if you're not prop swapping, something's not right. If you're a bettor and you want to make money, even if you're not a bettor, this is where it's great. You don't really have to be a hardcore bettor. This is where you can just say, look, I want to go buy a ticket. Washington football team to win the East. Buy that ticket now. What are the odds? And then halfway through the season, be like, hey, I got that Washington football ticket. I got them at 10-1. Well, they're 3-1 now. I'm going to post that ticket at Prop Swap. That's the way it works. So you don't even really have to make the bet for you. You can make the bet to sell it to somebody else. And that is how Prop Swap works. And that is why it's just a terrific addition to your sports betting portfolio. Prop Swap, where America buys and sells sports bets. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. And don't forget, watch the show live. So I will tell you what Tom Donahue had to say through a reporter about the whole fist pump gone wild from the draft night. Coming up next. good to have you with me on this Wednesday. Tomorrow, Thursday's show, we will be one day closer to the end of this NBA season, which we're talking about how important that number one seed is. The Sixers' final game is on the 16th of May. So still all this week, next week, and then one game on Sunday. I would imagine the NBA playoffs start on that Wednesday or Thursday, the 19th or 20th. So we still got a ways to go, and that's why these games are so important. I know people are losing sight of the end of this regular season. Don't do it. Don't do it, my friends. What I want you to do is hit me up on the text board, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973 is the text board. Good observations from some of our viewers today on the Eagles stuff, which Jalen says, Hightower out practicing with Hurts now, which I like to see. Seems like he's taking it more seriously. Yeah, I know John Hightower and some of the receivers have been out there, and they are working with Jalen Hurts. Always good to see that, get those guys out there. I think the wide receiver position is going to be interesting. I'll give you this. By the way, so I brought up, I do want to say this. Chris Mortensen tweeted, I guess it was last night, there was a tweet from Jeff McClain from the Inquirer. And McClain tweeted out something regarding the whole fist pump and who the battle was between. So Roseman yesterday said on a Philadelphia sports talk station that Tom Donahoe wanted Aleem McNeil and that the Eagles ended up getting Milton Williams. And Jeff McClain tweeted that can confirm from two independent sources that was the case. But he wasn't the only one that wanted McNeil. Donahoe also thought another 6th-round pick was needless, which I don't disagree with. I mean, if you're saying, hey, we made the trade and there was a player that we really, really wanted, but we got an extra 6th, I don't think that was the case. I think it was a split. There was other guys in the room that wanted McNeil. Not surprising. There were some people in the room that wanted Williams. Not surprising. Somebody has to make the decision. Howie Roseman's the one. Chris Mortensen tweeted out last night, Eagles senior advisor Tom Donahoe was flabbergasted about viral video fist bump with GM Howie Roseman beginning to spun as a sign of discord. Quote, that's silly. I didn't even know I was on camera. I thought Howie and Andy Weidel led as good a draft as we has had in my 10 years. So, I mean, now the interesting part will be, well, Donahue said that because the Eagles made him, or if he's actually right, and that's in lies the disconnect. Because a lot of fans don't want him to be right. A lot of fans want there to be discord. A lot of fans want a reason to pile on Roseman. Can we all just come together and say, maybe he did a good job? Even if you don't like Roseman, you should be cheering for him, right? Doesn't that make more sense? So the tweet essentially says Tom Donahue himself was quoted by saying, quote, I thought Howie and Andy led as good a draft as we've had in my 10 years. We talked about it yesterday. Tom Donahue and Roseman's going around the room. He's fist pumping everybody. Donahue, it's almost as if he gave him one of those, I'm not all that impressed. Yeah, so what? You picked this guy. I was not all that impressed. And Roseman's like, what do you mean you're not impressed? Something that happens a lot. But to see that out there now that, Tom Donahue's kind of like, not all that understanding why this is such a big deal. I think that should be a good thing for the Eagles fans out there. Look, I want to go back to here's one from Jalen. He says, Mike, I saw people saying they were rooting for Roseman to have a bad draft so they would fire him. Talk about strange priorities. I never understand that way of thinking. You would rather the team be bad just to get rid of somebody rather than the team be good, and who cares? Who cares why they're good? But that shows that you just dislike the person to dislike them. Because if you're now cheering for them to be bad because you don't like that person and you don't want them to be good because you don't want to give that guy credit, it shows your priorities are way out of whack for me anyway. Matt Green, check it in. Mike, would you go over 1,000 yards for Devonta Smith this year? It's a good question. Jeff Kerr going to join me in about an hour. Rob Motti, by the way, at 5 o'clock. Jeff Kerr at 5:25. So we got a lot of talk on the NFL and the Eagles in the 5 o'clock hour. They have an extra game this year. Keep that in mind. And the record for the Eagles, this is going to be interesting because they have the extra game. No Eagles rookie receiver has ever gone over 1,000 yards. No Eagles rookie receiver has ever had more than 1,000 yards receiving. And the direct leaders in those categories, the three main categories for the Philadelphia Eagles, I wonder if anybody out there knows who they are. Who has the most receiving yards as a rookie in Eagles history? The most catches by an Eagle rookie is Keith Jackson with 81, and he wasn't even a wideout. He was a tight end in 1988. The most yards was Deshaun Jackson with 912 in 2008. The most touchdowns was from Calvin Williams. He had 9 touchdowns in 1990. So those are the numbers. So if I told you that Devonta Smith had 81 catches for 912 yards and 9 touchdowns, would you be happy? Those are the best numbers an Eagle receiver has ever had. Matt Green, who asked that question. So with one extra game, I would say, yeah, it's possible Devonta Smith goes over 1,000 yards. 81 catches, 912 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Those are the best numbers an Eagle rookie receiver has ever had. Keith Jackson, who was a tight end, 81 catches. Deshaun Jackson, 912 yards. And Calvin Williams, 9 touchdowns. Put them all together, and you got Devonta Smith. Now, Devonta Smith, very much like Deshaun Jackson in terms of speed. Devonta Smith, very much like Deshaun Jackson in terms of explosion, right? He was a guy we talked about earlier in the week. Deshaun Jackson, small guy. Now, Calvin Williams, if you remember Calvin, was about 6 feet, 180. Devonta Smith, one is 6'1", about 170. So built a lot like Calvin Williams, a little bit taller, a little thinner. Now, Keith Jackson being a tight end, so not a lot of comparison, if any, there at all. But Deshaun Jackson and Calvin Williams, if you kind of put them together, you end up with a guy like Devonta Smith. So good question there, Matt. I would say he would be able to go over 1,000 yards with the extra game. Joe Show is watching on YouTube and says, I think some Eagles fans are too selfish. I like what Howie said. You can't please everyone. You have to do what's best for the team. Hey, in the world we live in today, the comment that Roseman made is the absolute right way to look at this thing. And that's hopefully, I hope that's the mindset that Roseman definitely has. I don't know that that's true, but I hope it is. And he talked about, and Rob Motti asked him this question, and Rob's going to join me in about 25 minutes. And then, quote, they said that the president of the United States wins the presidency sometimes with a little bit more than 50% of the votes. That's a lot of people who didn't vote for him. Certainly, when you're in leadership positions, not everyone's going to like the decisions you make. We start this process before we start the regular season, and we tell 37 guys that they're not going to be part of the journey with us. That's how we start this. So there's not a lot of fun situations when you have people that you care about and who have done a lot for you and have a Super Bowl trophy in part from some of these guys. And there's no doubt about it. Big part because of some of those guys. And his point is a good one. But I hope that he listens to himself here, is that there's a lot of people out there that just aren't going to like you because of the decisions that you make. And then there's another part of the people, how many times we hear someone who doesn't like what somebody does? And this guy's the dumbest guy ever. Well, there's 50% that say, no, I don't think so. That's how Roseman is being perceived essentially at this point. But the point that the guy in the video chat made is there are people that would rather the team stink than the team be good because they don't want to have to side with that person. And that tells me that you just hate the man. You hate the person. And that is just not productive. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. All right, we got a lot to do. Rob Motti next hour. What day is it? Wednesday? I keep looking at the board, and I'm like lost on what day it is. It's only Wednesday. I feel like it needs to be Thursday at minimum. Right? Jeff, Devonta Smith needs to sit with the offensive lineman during meals so he can pig out and get bigger. Well, we don't want his belly bigger. We want his legs bigger. He's actually pretty big on the top half of his body. It's his legs that are really small. I don't know how you get your legs bigger. Josh could maybe kick him to leg day with him. But other than that, I don't know how you get twig legs if you just have small lower body legs. I mean, can you really say, hey, this wasn't like a real question, actually, but I feel like you have like a real serious answer. I was really making a joke.
Well, listen, there are ways to build up muscle mass if you put in the time and the effort into it without taking steroids or anything.
You're still going to have skinny legs, though.
You will have not as skinny, like basically. So they won't be like, running back legs, but they won't be as skinny as they were. You could add a few inches at minimum of muscle within a year.
Yeah, I would like my legs to be smaller. Like I have big calves. Like my calves are big.
Well, part of that's because of the development as an athlete that you were when you were younger.
Right, but I don't want the big calves. He can have them. Can we trade?
No, but there are some things to solve.
Can I inject my calves into him? Maybe I do something like that.
If there was a way to do that, a lot of people would be doing that throughout the world.
Well, I'm offering him my calves. He can have them. We can just swap them. I don't need these big calves.
Are you okay with him taking your thighs, too?
Sure, I don't need these big calves and thighs anymore. I mean, at one point, they helped. I was fast when I was younger.
Right.
But now there's no need for me to have, like, the leftovers of me being fast are now me just having big calves and thighs. He can have them. And then I'll take his skinny little legs.
There you go. We actually solved the problem.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. All right, Sports Bash brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. No, it's an interesting question, though. Like that guy saying sit with the offensive lineman. You can't just pig out and eat and get your legs bigger. He's got a big enough upper body. He's not a small guy in the top half of his body. His problem is his bottom half is very skinny. His legs are very tiny. And the concern would be that he has like leg and ankle problems. And I wouldn't even say so much like hamstrings and that kind of stuff. Like he could potentially break his legs. They're so small. All right. Joe Show, I see your question. Others, you want to text in your question, 609-403-0973. You can do so. Rob Motti at 5, Jeff Kerr at 5:25. Don't go away. All right, back on a Wednesday. While I could sit and harp about the Phillies and how bad their defense was, I've decided to pass on that today because, quite frankly, it's not getting fixed. More details on what happened with the Phils over at 97.3 ESPN.com as they had to make a couple of roster moves. Unbelievable. Just when Roman Quinn was starting to settle in a little bit at the plate, he is on the injured list. For more details, go to our website, 973ESPN.com, as Mickey Moniak is back. Jeez. Thanks. Just what I wanted to see on my Wednesday. Hey, Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. Never mind. My gosh. Can we get some organizational depth here, please? Or am I going to have to see Mickey Moniak continue to do the drive from Allentown or wherever remote Pennsylvania town, Lehigh, back and forth over and over again? Is he going to turn into Michael Martinez? My gosh. By the way, Shane Gostisbehere suspended 2 games. Don't have a meltdown. Nobody cares. They play the Capitals twice this weekend, and then they close out the season with the Devils. I don't need any more Shane Gostisbehere. Talk about bad defense. The Phillies defense or Shane Gostisbehere. Who's worse defensively? You guys can battle that one out because I've made my decision. It's Ghost. He stinks. Get him out of here. It's time to blow this thing up. Dave Scott, the CEO of the Flyers, spoke the other day. And I guess on Monday, I'll have to talk to Durso to close this season up because I actually have a lot of Flyers questions. There was a report in the Post, New York Post, the other day that the Rangers today fired everybody. They just said, the hell with this. We're fine. And I'm not advocating following the model of James Dolan and the Rangers. But I'm interested with Dave Scott, who we don't know anything about, spoke for the first time, I think, in my life that we've ever heard him say anything. I'm definitely intrigued by what the offseason looks like for the Flyers. So legitimately, what do you do with Giroux, Voracek, who gets put on this expansion list, Gostisbehere, a lot of disappointment. The coach, what's his status moving forward? Where the disappointment? Ooh, this team. Because I had legitimate excitement about the team. They had a goaltender. It's the only reason. Could care less about Claude Giroux. Thanks for your service, Claude Giroux. You've been a great Flyer, but not good enough. It's okay to say Claude Giroux's been great, but not great enough. Pete Thompson brought it up yesterday. It's the only team, I think he said in professional sports, that have gone for 10 years of making the playoffs. That's who Claude Giroux is. That's who you are. You're good, but not good enough, and that's okay. It's okay. You don't know what he's saying. You suck. I'm not anyway. Claude Giroux's been a great player. It's not great enough. This is an organization that has legitimate intrigue this offseason, and I, for one, say sign me up for it. I want to see it. I'm ready. Now, as for the Phillies and their dysfunction, the manager forgot to put one of his players on the lineup card. That almost cost him the game last night. But that being said, they won for the first time back-to-back since the fourth game and fifth game, the third and fourth game of the season. They finally get some semblance going on in center field, and that guy gets hurt. So this center field thing is not ending anytime soon. And let me tell you something. They have no answer on their current organizational depth chart. It's not Odubel Herrera. It's certainly not Mickey Moniak, who stinks out loud. And it's not Scott Kingery, who, by the way, had the game-winning triple last night playing for the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. He finally gets a chance to get a little bit of confidence. And what do? You yo-yo him up and bring him up to Philadelphia. Wrong move. Let the guy play in Lehigh and get some confidence. This organization just completely has no idea about how to give a human being confidence. They have got to be one of the worst at saying, you know what? Build confidence. Vince Velasquez, you're in the starting rotation. We're going to put you in the chance for the starting rotation and then give you no shot at it. How about letting Vince Velasquez find a nice role as a guy in the bullpen? You and everybody else knows he can't be a starting pitcher. He knows it by now. If you said to Vince Velasquez and put him in a room, hey, sit down, bud, we want to have a talk. Do you think you're a starting pitcher? I'm sure Velasquez would say, probably not. But I think I can maybe find a new role as a bullpen guy. You know, there's a lot of guys who have gone from starter to reliever and worked out pretty good. Some guy named Rivera was pretty good at it. John Smoltz actually worked out well. Dennis Eckersley was pretty good at doing it. And I'm not suggesting that Vince Velasquez is going to turn into a Hall of Famer if you make him a bullpen guy, but he might have a lot more success than the guy that gets yo-yoed back and forth left and right. And now the Phillies are doing it with the one prospect they had in the organization, and they're starting to do it with the other one. Mickey Moniak and Scott Kingery. You had the number 1 overall pick in the draft, and now what are you doing? You're yo-yoing them back and forth. Why? So we can share at bats with Odubel Herrera? Give me a break. Scott Kingery, is there any need that you needed to bring him up here? Why? So we could watch Nick Maton take at bats from him? Yeah, that's a way to build confidence for a guy who was completely devoid of it and then finally had something positive happen last night. And what did you do? Hey, welcome back. Sit on the bench. Smart. Hey, look, I want to like Dave Dombrowski, and I want to like this Phillies team, and I want to get into this season. And so far, I have been. I've watched almost every single inning of every single game. And the only thing that I can come up with is this team stinks. They're poorly managed. Joe Girardi, I'm sorry. I was not a Gabe Kapler hater by any stretch of the imagination. For those of you who listen, you know, I didn't think Gabe Kapler was that big of a problem. You know who thinks Gabe Kapler is a problem? People who think they know too much about baseball. You know what? Nobody knows enough about baseball. There's way many ways to play baseball. Me, for one, I don't like analytics. I don't like all the crazy launch angles and exit velocities, but I don't discount them. I don't think they have no place in the game. People didn't like Gabe Kapler for the same reasons they don't like Howie Roseman. People didn't like Gabe Kapler for the same reasons they don't like a lot of people. And guess what? Gabe Kapler right now is managing the best team in baseball. And you went out and got the baseball guy in Joe Girardi that you really wanted, and he is part of the problem right now. And I'm not saying he stinks. And I'm not saying he's going to be part of the biggest problem. But he made an amateur move last night, and he's made a lot of them along the way. There are nights where I just can't comprehend how a big league manager can't figure out how to manage their bullpen. It's not hard. It's not a hard job. It really isn't. And yet, so many of these guys flip it up all the time. I mean, holy moly, Joe Girardi. I know you managed in the American League for a long time, so you really didn't manage a baseball team. But geez. All right, coming up, Rob Motti. On the other side, Jeff Kerr, 525. Sounds of the day, 540. We got a busy hour. I hope you stay with us. I got that off my chest. I'm going to – I'm sorry if you have to watch the Phillies play. Jersey P. I don't have to. I elected to. But it's excruciating some nights, Jersey P. Thanks for watching on YouTube. It's excruciating watching them manage that team some nights. All right, I'm back with Rob Motti from the Associated Press next. All right, 5 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash right now on a Monday, or a Wednesday, I should say. Rob Motti set to join us here in just a couple of minutes. We'll talk a little Eagles and the offseason, what's next with him, get his thoughts. I know that a lot of people, that whole thought process out there that, hey, I'd rather see the team stink so they get rid of Howie Roseman, who is just bewildering to me. But we got a lot of that today, which I think is kind of bizarre. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. Even if Howie Roseman, if I hated the man, and I will say, anybody who was on that Super Bowl, part of that one Super Bowl that the Eagles have won, sorry, I can't go down that road. I can't do it. I will always have appreciation for that group of guys who was a part of that team. All of them. I will always do that. He's included because I think he was a big part of why they built that Super Bowl roster, like it or not. Rob Motti going to join us here on the Sports Bash in just a couple of minutes. Jeff Kerr at the bottom of the hour at 5:25, getting you through on a Wednesday, 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Mike, I'm with you on G. Thank you much for your service, but time to move on. Got 1 year left on the deal, by the way. So you'll probably see him next year with the Flyers, I would imagine. One more time, one more chance for him, I would imagine. And then they got an interesting decision on their hand. Do they want to see him? Because he's going to keep playing after that. But I'm interested to see, look, I talked about this at the last hour, but they got a lot of decisions to make at the with the expansion draft next year. Who do they want to leave unprotected? And then if that expansion team, Seattle, wants to pick up Jake Voracek or Shane Gostisbehere or Claude Giroux and put them on their roster, hey, we're a new team. We want to bring in somebody. I don't know that Claude Giroux is well known enough around the league, like that Seattle's going to get all that excited to, hey, we're starting our team with Claude Giroux. I don't know that that's going to put butts in the seats out there. I mean, of course, they're going to have butts in the seats anyway because it's an expansion franchise and people are going to be excited about that. But, hey, do you put him unprotected? I don't think they would do that kind of disservice to him. I don't think they would, it's a slap in the face to say we're going to, leave you unprotected in the expansion draft. Now, Voracek, different story. I wouldn't be shocked if they did that with Voracek. Gostisbehere, I would be pretty shocked if they didn't include him on that list. So that's that with that conversation that stemmed over from the last hour. 609-403-0973 on the text board. 609-403-0973. I think that, and we're going to talk to Rob about this, what after this draft, what is kind of the message moving forward? We talked about this with Sal a couple weeks ago. I guess it was like 2 weeks ago now that Sal Powell talked about the fact that inside that locker room, the NovaCare complex, that they think that they are close. And when you say close, it is they think they can compete in the NFC East. So one thing is when you look at this NFC East, what kind of battles are there? You have the Dallas Cowboys who are getting back their quarterback, which makes them, in my mind, one of the clear favorites. You've got the Washington football team that has Fitzpatrick, that you add to them the quarterback that they just did not have last year. I think that makes them an interesting candidate. The next question is the Giants at their quarterback play. And definitely you have a situation where the Eagles have a very big unknown there. So Rob Motti is here. Let's get into the conversation with him as now that this team, Rob, what's going on, man, as we have, all right, free agency, Eagles not a factor. We have the draft is now in the books. So I guess the next part is what's next for this team and where they kind of see themselves. And listening to Howie Roseman, the 2 times that he spoke over the weekend, did you get a better sense of where, Rob, this franchise now sees themselves entering the 2021 season.
Yeah, Mike. And you know what? I think they see themselves in a more winnable position than a lot of us view them, because I looked at this team, and you and I have talked about it. I see them anywhere from a 5 to 7 win team, but I think they look at this division, they look at the players that they have, the coaching staff, the energy, the excitement level, the talent, and they feel that there's a possibility they might be able to compete in what should still be a bad division, where maybe 9 wins you the NFC East. So I think they view themselves in a more positive light. That remains to be seen if that can play out. But when Howie talks about or making that comparison with the cornerback situation to 2017, when they went out and got Ronald Darby right in August, shortly before the season started, I know going back to 2017, coming off the 7-9 2016 season, I think most of us thought they were a 9-7 team at best. I know I had them at 9-7. Take the next step, get into the playoffs, be a wild card. I don't know anybody who envisioned them winning a Super Bowl or even getting close to a Super Bowl then. So that's not to say this team is at that level or anywhere near that level. But I think they're looking at it like we're going to be better than most people expect us to be. So there are holes that we can fill that may be filled through some veterans at some point.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a second, because Roseman did say, hey, in 2016, they told us it was going to be 5 years. It took us 12 months. So that was his way of kind of saying, you questioned us then, you're questioning us now. They have a lot of similar paths that they can take to do some of the things. I mean, they went out and got Patrick Robinson. No one thought a lot of him. He turned out to be a huge player for them. You know, Anthony Harris is a guy that's been a player in this league. They went out and signed under the radar, staying with Wilson. And he kind of indicated, I really thought it was pretty clear that they don't think they have a corner on this roster, but we'll do whatever we have to find one.
Yeah, and I kind of got that also out of him. I think Avonte Maddox is probably ticketed for the nickel spot, where he actually had some success, and perhaps working in a new system with a new coaching staff, new defensive coordinator, being away from the Jim Schwartz defense and the way the cornerbacks played then might be able to help Avonte and some of the other guys. But I don't know that they have an answer right now on the outside, along with Darius Slay. Zach McPherson is a guy who he's coming in here as a 4th-round pick. You can't pencil him in as a starter. Can he work his way into that role? Perhaps. But would it be best to probably ease him into that role? I think so. So I would anticipate that the Eagles are on the lookout for a veteran corner. And you know what, Mike? It doesn't have to be a guy at the tail end of his career. There are some free agents out there who are in their mid-20s who you could bring in and have for 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say that, you know, I know a lot of people keep asking me, hey, Steven Nelson, Richard Sherman, Brashad Breeland, Garyon Conley, somebody's going to pick up one of those guys, and I wouldn't be shocked if Howie was, of course, making those calls, you know, and we know that now you don't have to give up the comp pick, so it would probably be short, but it could be a trade too. I want to ask you, because you asked him about Zach Ertz. Number one, are you surprised Zach Ertz is still here? Let's start with that.
I am, and because really, if you're going to show loyalty to a player who has meant so much for this organization, the time to move him has passed. The time to where he can go into a situation at around the free agency period or around a draft where he can settle in, or he could have picked his spot or whatever it could have been, that's passed. So now where they're at right now, the Eagles have clearly drawn a line, Mike, where we're going to do what's in the best interest of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be critical of a team wanting to do what's in the best interest of the team. But we've seen situations in the past where they released Malcolm Jenkins. They released Deshaun Jackson several years ago. The Houston Texans released J.J. Watt. The Eagles could have released Zach Ertz, but instead they wanted a premium pick. They wanted a 3rd-round pick. Teams are very aware of the situation. They know that this relationship has deteriorated to a point where there's going to be a divorce. We just don't know when. So more teams are more likely, if they want Zach Ertz, rather than trade for him, nobody's giving up a 3rd-round pick. And clearly nobody wanted to give up even a day 3 pick this past draft. So the Eagles are going to be left in a situation where you either take whatever teams give you or you just part ways with Zach after June 1st, which will help the salary cap situation a little bit. But I don't see any scenario, none. I would be absolutely stunned to see Zach Ertz back next year.
Wow. All right. So that was pretty definitive from you anyway. Rob Motti from the Associated Press covers the Eagles. Now, I guess, I mean, could they use Jordan Matthews a couple of years ago in a third-round pick to get Ronald Darby? Could Ertz be utilized in that way?
Absolutely. When you look at what Jordan Matthews was in 2017 compared to, yes, he was younger, but Zach Ertz is only 30 years old. He's a tight end. We've seen tight ends play into their mid to late 30s from Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez, Gronk right now, Jason Witten. So a guy like Zach Ertz, who takes care of his body, who's in peak physical condition, who wants to wear that gold jacket someday, I think he's got several good years ahead of him. So packaging Zach Ertz and a pick, I don't know what pick, but you got a plethora of picks, right? Couldn't get you someone if you don't want to dive into the free agent market at cornerback.
10 picks next year, by the way, already 10 picks next year through trades this year and stuff from the past. You know,
3 possible ones that they're going to use for Aaron Rodgers, right? No, we're not going there.
Come on, man. Don't get everybody all fired up.
No, that's just speculation. It's just speculation. I'm just, it's not a report.
You said you would be shocked if Ertz is back. But if he is back, does
Not
that
happening, Mike. No. Mm-mm.
All right, well, play along. If he
Okay.
was here, does that tell you that they think that they are better than everybody else thinks?
Well, it would tell me, if Zach Ertz is back, that the ability to forgive and forget and move on, small miracles do happen. I've seen them happen. So it would take a small miracle for that to happen.
But in other
if
words, Zach Ertz would want to be here.
Yeah. If it were to happen, yeah, that's the Eagles saying, hey, we're better than you think we are. We're better off. The Eagles are, as a football team, better off in 2021 with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert at tight end than Dallas Goedert and a 6th or 7th round pick or releasing Zach Ertz. I mean, that's just football knowledge, right? But the situation is at a point now where that's why I say I think it would take a minor miracle.
All right. You asked Howie Roseman on Saturday, I think it was. Maybe it was Friday. I got my days kind of. But you asked him about the perception, if he's aware of the public perception. Like, for instance, we have people today say they would rather the team stink just to fire Roseman and get rid of him. I said, what if they won? It's like they don't want him to win because they don't want to have to acquiesce to say he did a good job. So you asked him about his public perception. He gave you a pretty interesting answer.
Yeah, and he went into, I've been busy. It's Friday. Kids waking me up early, and I loved how Nick Sirianni just jumped in there and said, "Well, Rob, my contractor gave me a fist bump or a high five or whatever it was." So I know he was happy with the pick. But Howie is far more aware of his public perception, and it's been documented in various reports. And he's very aware of his perception than he'll let on. And he wasn't going to let on, but I was trying to extend him a little bit, like, hey, how because we were coming off Devontae Smith. So I did ask him that question Friday because we were coming off Devontae Smith when everybody was like, Howie's the man. He got a first-round pick. He got Devontae Smith. Look at what he did. How was he able to do this? And it was a high up until they draft Landon Dickerson, and then they go different directions, and then people are bashing Howie again. But yeah, he's aware, man. He's aware.
All right, so you led me right into this because in the past we would bash them for making a bad pick, So he is now saying, yeah, in the past we went off our board. We took guys that we needed, and we took them because we needed them, not because we thought they were the best guy. Now we're taking the best guy, and now you're ripping me.
He's got a point. He does have a point, but
does he have a point? This like, hey, I took the best guy. We took Rasul Douglas in the past because we needed a corner. He might not have been the best player there, but we needed a corner, so we took him. Now we took the best player, and now you're ripping me.
Yeah, he's got a point there, but I don't know. I'm okay with the Landon Dickerson pick. I'm fine with bringing in a guy who, at that point, I looked at Christian Barmore. I liked him. Defensive tackle, local kid, went to my alma mater, St. John Newman in South Philly. But Landon Dickerson he's got so much talent. And we will continue to say this. We'll say if he's healthy. And Mike, if he's healthy, he's a first-round pick. If he's healthy, he's a guy who can contribute next year because the Eagles have always had injuries on the offensive line. He can play the interior. He started on the exterior, so he can do that. Now, should an offensive lineman be the highest-rated guy on the board when they get to pick 37? Hey, that's what their board said. They took the gamble. I'm not going to kill them over Landon Dickerson. I actually thought – I was shocked they took Devontae Smith. I really thought they were going to stick to their trenches in the first round, and I was hoping that they would trade down and take somebody in the trenches rather than trade up or stay put because I just didn't think they would go wide receiver. I didn't think they would go corner, and I thought they would take an O lineman or D lineman. So I was like, all right, if you're going to do that, get another pick out of it. But They shocked me. They surprised me.
Well, and then Howie went down that road to say, look, I know fans are going to be mad because if we take offensive and defensive linemen, but I'm not apologizing to that for anybody. That's how we won the Super Bowl, and that's how we'll do it again. They drafted four? They drafted an offensive lineman, 2 D tackles, and 2 D ends. So, I mean, they're staying true to their roots of winning.
They are, and that's been an organizational philosophy for a long period of time. Now, yeah, that's how you build teams. You build them through the draft, you build them through the trenches, but you got to hit on these picks. So Landon Dickerson has to be healthy. You can't mess up another second-round pick. It can't happen. It's happened too often in the near past, with the exception of Miles Sanders. So they need Landon Dickerson to be healthy and to be a guy who steps in and starts. They need Milton Williams to be a guy who can contribute right away, especially, Mike, based after what happened with Tom Donahoe and the whole fist bump fiasco.
Yeah, all right. So I was getting to that because obviously a national NFL reporter put out that Donahue was perplexed by the whole situation, and he's saying it was the best draft that we've had in the 10 years I've been here, the way that the room was run. So obviously they're trying to put the fires out too. What are you hearing about? Obviously, it's a perception thing because I'm not all that surprised that, hey, Mike Gill and Rob Motti are in a draft room together. Rob likes McNeil. Gill likes Williams. All right, we don't agree.
We'd arm wrestle over it, Mike. You and I
lose that one. But if we fist, you might say, you take McNeil. I don't want him. I didn't look at it like I look like that's probably goes on everywhere. So, but it's a perception problem the Eagles have, correct?
It is a perception problem that the Eagles have. And yes, the fact that it happens in so many different places, we didn't see it on video, but arguments happen. Bill Parcells, it's been well known that he used to butt heads with guys. So we know that it happens, but because it happens in other places doesn't mean we here in Philly should dismiss it as, it's water under the bridge. It's no big deal because of what's happened in Philadelphia, because of not just the perception, but what's been reported that Howie Roseman is somebody who listens too much to his analytics, doesn't listen to his scouts, doesn't listen to the coaches. So when you come into a draft with all of these perception issues and then something minor like that happens, that's going to get magnified, and I think rightfully so. And I'll tell you what, we talked a little bit earlier about how Howie is well aware of his perception. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that I'm pretty certain Tom Donahoe did not he heard about that. I'm sure he heard about that.
Oh, yeah. I said I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Donahoe, who knew he was even still here, was not here much longer.
Oh, yeah. I anticipate that email at some point or something that says parted ways, or that could happen. Again, not a report, speculation.
Right. Rob Motti also covers the Phillies. How long have you been covering the Phillies? Have you ever seen a guy not hitting on the lineup card? Now, I manage baseball, and I have to write it in by hand, and I don't think I've ever done that.
No, and I played baseball my whole life. I've covered the Phillies now for 22 years. I've never seen anything like that. I thought it was interesting, though, afterwards, because it happened to the Brewers a couple of weeks ago. So here I am saying I've never seen that in baseball in all my life, and it actually happened to Craig Counsell and the Brewers. And Counsell said afterwards that on his lineup card, Eniel De Los Santos was on it. So it was only on the umpire's card, and it's computer generated. Yeah, it's a computer generated thing from the Major League Baseball that goes to the umpires. But as Joe Girardi said afterwards, ultimately it falls on him and other people see it, but he's got to see it. He didn't see it. It's strange. It's crazy. They're lucky they got the win. Yeah. But that's another example of, we had a couple weeks ago where Joe forgot about visiting the mound twice, and now this, and I just look out west and I see Gabe Kapler and the San Francisco Giants leading the division, and I go,
Yep. I brought that point up a little earlier, and I would be, hey, a lot of people didn't like Gabe for, I would assume, his looks.
I would talk about that on shows sometimes, Mike, and I really felt that way. People did not. There were some people who just flat out hated Gabe Kapler because, I take care of myself, right? I'm a fitness dude. Gabe Kapler made me feel bad about myself. I would walk into his office and I'd be like, my man, he's jacked, he's ripped, and he's a good looking dude. He's well spoken, all that. And the haters gonna hate, right? So yep. I think that was part of it. That played into it. He wasn't a Philly guy. He's such a California dude. But at the end of the day, he did not fit in Philadelphia. But he's doing well right now in San Fran. If it's early in the season, it's a small sample size. I had no issue with Joe Girardi being hired as Philly's manager. I don't think any of us had any issues with Joe Girardi. And I don't think these small little minor things are a big deal. But he does have a better team, and Gabe's having more success with lesser talent. It just makes you just shrug your shoulders and go, interesting.
All right. He's Rob Motti. Great stuff covering this Eagles offseason. Should be interesting the rest of the way. We'll see all the battles unfold. Mini camps, training camp. They'll be here before we know it. And, of course, Rob, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Rob. See you, man.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Always good, of course. Here, coming up, we got plenty more to go. Not a lot of time, but we will do our best to get as much in as we can. On the other side, NFL conversation. Aaron Rodgers, suitors, what could they get? Fitz, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports on the way. And don't you go away. We got sound of the day. I did a lot of rhyming right there. It was all off the top of my head, I swear. Sports Bash Wednesday here with you, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. Back with more Sports Bash next. All right, here we go. On a Wednesday, we'll look at the NFL. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, is here. As, man, there's so much going on. Of course, this Aaron Rodgers stuff, I want to get his opinion on that. More draft conversation moving forward. Also, Zach Ertz is still an Eagle. You just heard Rob Motti say he'd be shocked if he was an Eagle still. So that tells you where that is. And we got so much more NFL on the way. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. What's going on, Jeff?
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
All is well. So let's start there. Motti just said he'd be shocked if Zach Ertz was back in Philadelphia. What say you?
I'm the same way. I'd be shocked if he was back too. Rob is in the know with this stuff. If Rob Motti says Zach Ertz is going to be shocked, I would say the same thing. I'm actually kind of surprised he hasn't been dealt, but from what I've heard, the Eagles just won't budge on their asking price. They want at least a third-round pick for this guy, and rightfully so. There's only 2 tight ends over the last.
Looks like
but
yeah. No, well, and the one thing too is, they were asking for a third. They didn't get a third. Now what? Do they use them for a deal to get that corner? Do they use them for a deal to get a pick next year? What's the most likely divorce here? Looks like we got a little bit of a with Jeff. We'll try to get him back and reconnect it here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. There we go. I think he's back and ready to go right there. Are you back, Jeff?
I'm back.
All right, good. So what's the most likely divorce? A trade for a player, a trade for a pick in next year's draft, a combination of both, or they just release him and get the cap space?
I'm sure the Eagles would love to get a pick for him. I don't think they just want to release him. Howie Roseman is right. They're just not going to give Zach Ertz away. They're just not going to release him, and they don't have to. Honestly, the Eagles are a better football team with Zach Ertz on it than they are without, and they don't have a number 2 tight end right now. They have Dallas Goedert, but again, it all depends what Nick Sirianni wants to do with this offense. And right now, I think the best option for them is to keep Zach Ertz and keep Dallas.
We got a little bit of a connection problem again with Jeff. It's all right. We'll try to get him. There he goes. There he goes. All right. So let's
thunderstorms around here.
Yeah. Well, we had some crazy rain earlier today here as well. I mean, it came down. So let's transition to what's going on in Green Bay. How is this thing going to play out? How is this thing going to end? I mean, you got it sounds like the Packers do have a little bit of hand here. Like they can say, look, we have you under contract, but how does it ultimately end up? Does he get traded? Does he just sit the season out? Does he retire? Is he hosting Jeopardy? What happens here?
I mean, he could pull the Barry Sanders and just say, look, I'm done flat out unless you trade me or if you release me. And they're not going to release him, obviously. There's too big of a cap hit. But Aaron Rodgers can dictate where he wants to go. And I think if he tells the Packers, I want to go to Denver Broncos, I want to go to Las Vegas Raiders, I think the Packers would be okay with that if they give them a nice package for him. And look, I think it's got to start with at least 3 first-round picks, maybe 4.
Whoa.
You're trading Aaron Rodgers here. You're not, this isn't like when Brett Favre was dealt. And Brett Favre was coming off a career year at age 37. Ironically, the same year Rodgers is, but Rodgers just won the MVP award. No MVP has ever played for another team out the year after his MVP season. The other 2 that have pretty much did not play were Jim Brown and Norm Van Brockel, and they retired. So, look, this is what Green Bay has to do. They have to say to these teams, look, you want him? We will listen, but we're not just going to give this guy away. We're not going to let you win a Super Bowl with this guy. I don't think they'll win a Super Bowl with the Raiders, but you never know. But the Denver Broncos, I think they could have a compelling package in the works.
Yeah, look, I think Las Vegas would probably do whatever it takes. Knowing Gruden and that whole situation, I wouldn't be surprised if they did whatever it takes.
A fun pairing, too.
What's that?
It'd be a fun pairing.
Absolutely. But Denver, we were talking about before, like Pro Football Focus ranked their roster as the 6th best roster in football. They just have one of the worst quarterbacks in football. To me, having him on Denver would make it a very compelling situation.
This is a playoff team in Denver, they have a quarterback. Like, I wasn't a fan of Drew Lock, but I thought Denver should have given him a chance to, pretty much see what he could do last year after a strong finish to 2019. And he just was the worst quarterback in football. And I kept saying every Broncos game I watch, I'm like, this is a playoff team if Drew Lock isn't as bad as he is. They had the receivers. They had the running back. I still don't know why they got rid of Philip Lindsay. I'll never understand that move. Melvin Gordon was good for them last year, but you could have used both of them. The Juwan James injury is a killer for them. That guy just gets hurt all the time. They were really banking on him to play right tackle opposite of Garrett Bowles, and Juwan James has just been hurt, or he's been sitting out seasons or whatever, and he's getting paid a lot of money to do that. So, I would think Denver's got to clean that up first. So Aaron Rodgers isn't going to have the greatest offensive line in Denver to begin with, but their defense is top notch. I love the Patrick Surtain pick. I love what they did with the secondary there. Kyle Fuller is a stud. They got him on a 1-year, $9 million deal. This is a talented roster in Denver. Here's the thing, though. They just need that quarterback. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater moves the needle for me. Aaron Rodgers, they're not winning the NFC West, but they're in a 10-11 win team.
It'd be close. I mean, that would be interesting.
They're going to give the Chiefs a fight. I'll say that.
Yeah, Rodgers and Mahomes in the same division would be something that I know the networks would be fist fighting over that primetime game, right?
I'd love to see it. As CBS, we cover the AFC. I'd be dying to go to that game.
Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, yes, covers the NFL. One of the things I want to get the NFC East. Washington won the division last year. Dak Prescott was hurt. They had injuries galore, but have the Washington football team quietly had the best offseason in the division?
I think they have. It's weird because they're the division champions and it felt like they didn't do much, but they did enough. Like, they added Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think they got an upgraded quarterback there. And I know a lot of Washington fans probably want Taylor Heineke to win the job, but let's face it, you're not probably going to win the division again with Taylor Heineke. But he's a very good backup for them. And I'm glad they got him taken care of, got him to a 2-year deal. Again, Ryan Fitzpatrick isn't a long-term answer there. But for 2021, I think he's more than fine. And that's what I like about Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's a stopgap move in a year you probably weren't going to trade up and get a quarterback anyway. If he fails, then you got a top 10 draft pick.
Yeah, I like the addition of Fitzpatrick. It gives them a quarterback who can make plays. I know he's had some turnover issues, but I like what they've done with the playmakers. They got McLaurin. They got the receiver in the 3rd round, De'Ami Brown. I thought that was a very underrated move. I like
at 84 too. I thought he'd be going way before
that. Corners that are still available. Number one, why are they still available? Guys like Steve Nelson, Garyon Conley, Richard Sherman's available, Brashad Breeland, and are any of those a fit in Philly?
Well, it's a shame Casey Hayward's gone because that was the guy I wanted for the Eagles. But, obviously he went to Vegas. So I think Steven Nelson would be a nice fit for them. But the Eagles could have signed him a month ago if they really wanted to because he was released. I don't know what they're waiting on there. Maybe they're just waiting for the price to go down. Who knows? Maybe they're waiting until after the draft.
Why is everybody else behind him?
Yeah, exactly. And Garyon Conley, the Eagles liked him in 2017. I know he was a big Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz is a big fan of him. I don't know how this defense would work, but he's a veteran. He's an option in there. He's still a young player. Coming this year would have been his second contract. So I think injuries have hurt Garyon Conley a bit. That's why I think he's unsigned. But you can't do worse than what they have right now, unless they really want to play. They haven't re-signed Crevion LeBlanc either. I'm kind of shocked about that. Right now it just seems like they're going to go Avonte Maddox on the outside. I guess that's what they're going to do right now.
Roseman brought up in the press conference the other day. He made the story about hey, we made a trade in 2017. We got a corner. I would imagine they go back down that route.
I would.
Right at worst. At the worst case scenario, they go down the route of, trading a player that's on the current roster and a pick and going down the route to get like Ronald Darby, like that trade, right?
Yeah, exactly. I would feel like a 3rd round pick would do it. And again, that's what it cost them for Ronald Darby. And they won a Super Bowl with that. Everybody's like, oh, Darby didn't really pan out here. I'm like, actually he did. He was pretty good in 2017. He didn't have a good 2018, but 2017, he was more than a fine player here, and he was exactly what that young defense needed. And it gave Sidney Jones time, it gave Rasul Douglas time, and the Eagles pretty much made Rasul Douglas a backup when they got Sidney Jones, and it worked out pretty well. I mean, when they got Ronald Darby, and it worked out pretty well. It's a shame Darby got hurt because I feel like he was coming into his best years, and it was only 2 quarters with the Eagles before he got hurt, but it was a great trade.
Yeah. Oh, and keep in mind, people forget, yeah, he missed half the year, came back. That injury to the ankle looked gruesome. Came back, and it was him and Jalen Mills. It was funny. Yet the other day I was talking about this, Jeff. People say, I hate Howie Roseman. Well, he won the Super Bowl. Darby, he stunk. He won the Super Bowl. Mills, he stunk.
Nelson Aguilar stunk. He won the Super Bowl.
They all won the Super Bowl, and they all stink. It's funny how that all kind of worked out. So, yeah, those guys all helped out. I'm interested to see. That, to me, is the last kind of offseason addition they need to. They can't go into camp or they can't go into the season, I guess we should say, because they made that trade in August. Roseman said, we played a preseason game in Milwaukee against Green Bay, and we made the trade. So they can't enter the season with this group of corners.
No, they can't. They literally cannot do this. Like, they just can't go in with they role in this offense right now. I mean, in this defense right now, it's actually kind of insane when you think about, like, he may be the starting slot quarterback because they're going to have to play Avonte Mack. They're going to have to play someone outside. Who's he going to go with? Seymour? Is he going to play the outside? I don't think so.
I was going to say, unless they have a guy that is here that they like a lot more than all of us do. Seymour, Braylon Arnold, Michael Jacquet, one of those guys.
If Braylon Arnold's not a bad player, I just don't think he should start. Michael Jacquet, I don't want any parts of him. I saw enough in that Dallas game to, I don't know why he's still on the roster. He's kind of like the David Hale of the Eagles at this point. You really don't need him here. Like, I just don't understand why he's here right now. But this is where I kind of wish they went a little more cornerback in the draft, like they went one in the second round. But again, I like Landon Dickerson. I think that's a good pick for the future, and he was the best guy on their board. But they're putting a lot of pressure right now on Zach McPherson to contribute right away. And
all right, Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Our little football fix in the 5 o'clock hour here on the Bash. And he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. We'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. That story, bonkers. I can't believe it's gotten to this point. And obviously all the other NFL news, we'll keep our eyes on. Jeff's back Friday to get you ready for the weekend in the NFL. All right, Jeff. Thanks, man. All right, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. We talk NFL with him. We'll do it for a while, and then into the football season here on the Sports Bash. All right, coming up, we got had great guests today, great information from Jay Fitz, Paul Hudrick, Jeff Mosher, Rob Motti, and Jeff Kerr. So what's the sound of the day? Find out coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I want to tell you about my guys over at Trifecta Therapeutics. Now's the time, guys. You're outside. The weather's finally nice. My gosh, so beautiful out this weekend. You probably run around your backyard, playing some hoops in the driveway. Injuries happen, and if they do, you want to get them checked out. Don't let them linger. Don't let them sit around. Go to the Premier Sports Rehab and Performance Center in South Jersey, in Glassboro, at Trifecta Therapeutics. Whether you're a weekend warrior or a finely tuned athlete, we all get hurt. It all happens. Get your free discovery session today. Use code ESPN Radio at trifectatherapeutics.com or call today. Trifecta Therapeutics. They service the pros and the Joes, so why not you? Sports Bash coming back. All right, here we go as we get ready to wrap up a Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, 5 sounds of the day. We had great guests today, Jay Fitz, Paul Hudrick, Jeff Mosher for football at 4, and, of course, Rob Motti, you heard, and Jeff Kerr right there, who's always really good on the NFL. So a lot more with Jeff throughout the offseason and, of course, in season as well. All right, Josh, let's see what stood out to you today. And one of the things would be Rob Motti, who just joined us here in the 5 o'clock hour, who said this.
Where they're at right now, the Eagles have clearly drawn a line, Mike, where we're going to do what's in the best interest of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be critical of a team wanting to do what's in the best interest of the team. But we've seen situations in the past where they released Malcolm Jenkins. They released Deshaun Jackson several years ago. The Houston Texans released J.J. Watt. The Eagles could have released Zach Ertz, but instead they wanted a premium pick. They wanted a third-round pick.
So are they better off releasing? Okay, here's my question. Hindsight 2020, you know what happened in 2017. They were bad and they were mediocre in 2016. Roseman said it the other day. People said it was going to take us 5 years to get out of this. It took us 12 months. Knowing that, is it better just keeping Zach Ertz?
I kind of have to agree with what Rob was saying. He made a very good point. You know, it's the Eagles' prerogative to do what's best in the interest of the franchise, but I feel like they kind of let Zach Ertz down. Like you could have helped the guy out a little bit more. You could have said, look, if we're going to move on from you, let's just cut the cord and just move on.
Well, what if they make a trade for him? He's saying because of the timing. If you're trading a guy in training camp, he doesn't get a chance to learn the new system,
correct,
all that stuff.
It's just a strange situation to be in. It's not ideal. It's obviously very difficult to, for a player, I think from the player's perspective, to digest the whole situation when you're like, look, I gave my heart and soul to this organization, and you guys are holding up the future of my career over a third-round draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's the business, right?
Oh, I didn't say it was good. I'm just saying it's a strange situation.
That's the thing. It's like the Eagles are doing their job at the disservice of the player.
Right. It's a no-win situation ultimately.
Well, why didn't they give him up, Rob Motti?
Teams are very aware of.
Good grief.
Teams are very aware of the situation. They know that this relationship has deteriorated to a point where there's going to be a divorce. We just don't know when. So more teams are more likely, if they want Zach Ertz, rather than trade for him, nobody's giving up a third-round pick. And clearly nobody wanted to give up even a day 3 pick this past draft. So the Eagles are going to be left in a situation where you either take whatever teams give you, or you just part ways with Zach after June 1st, which will help the salary cap situation a little bit.
Yeah, this one's interesting. Teams are not giving up premium picks. So you're telling her and saying nobody wants you. So we tried, but we don't, all we were getting was like a 6th-round offer. I mean, it's a weird spot to be in if you're the player too. So essentially the other teams are saying, well, we like you, but we don't like you for that much.
Right. We would love to have you, Zach Ertz, but we're not willing to give up whatever the Eagles want us to give up for you. The whole situation, I think, has played out exactly how they did not want it to happen.
Of course not. Well, and we don't have that bite in here, but when he's like, I'd be shocked he's not coming back. Like, I feel like everybody's been saying this about Ertz, and now it's almost got that feeling maybe they're just saying we're better off keeping you.
Hey, if Zach Ertz is on the field for the Eagles for the 2021 season, I will be shocked.
But I thought the point Mosher brought up was a good one. Is that one in here?
No.
I didn't see. Okay, where he said, you've got Devonta Smith, you've got Jalen Reagor, why, he mentioned the tight end, the wide receiver depth, not depth that's great, but there's a lot of bodies. Why would you want to go 2 tight ends?
Right.
That's interesting.
And I
guess what? Ertz and Goddard are better than playing J.J. Arcega-Whiteside.
I would agree with that.
Or Greg Ward.
Well, that's subjective because Zach Ertz didn't play well last year, and Greg Ward led the team in targets.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Jason Fitz. Which player is the most intriguing draft pick?
By the way, I think the Eagles had a really nice draft, and Kenneth Gainwell is not getting enough love. That is a kid that is going to come in. Watch Memphis running backs in the NFL. Memphis running backs make it in the NFL because Memphis knows how to groom running backs. Gainwell is not good. He's great, and he's going to be somebody that I think the Eagles can bank on for a while. So he was a steal in the 5th round.
Agree.
Oh, that's exactly what I wrote about over at 97.3 ESPN.com. I laid out all the details of who those Memphis running backs are, about how, there is a history of running backs being drafted on day 3 who have been successful in the NFL.
Oh, there's a lot of them, by the way. In fact, that's all of the guys now.
And don't forget, Steichen, your new offense coordinator, Sirianni, your new head coach. They both come from offenses that love to use multiple running backs. This is not a coincidence that they ended up with this guy. This guy fell in their lap. They couldn't pass him up. And now he's probably going to have a specific, very expansive role in the offense because last year, here's the stat.
They didn't have another back that they can do anything with. Boston Scott's a nice story. They didn't have anything for him.
So here's the stat last year.
He played a lot better when Sanders was out.
So Sanders, his combined rushing yards last year was more than the combined total yards of Boston Scott, Justin Huntley, Corey Clement, and Jordan Howard combined last year.
Well, just think, you had to make a deal or pick up Jason Huntley, Boston Scott. You had to pick up Jordan Howard. Yeah. Gainwell will be one of the more intriguing guys to watch because I'm very interested to see what kind of role they give.
I'm excited because I feel like they finally had the running back tandem that we felt like they needed. They needed a bona fide number 2. And I think Boston Scott showed last year that it's just not really in his DNA to be that guy.
It's a big one for the hometown 5 tonight. You can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Paul Hudrick, talk about it.
The more you win now and the closer and the more you can wrap things up, you then dictate what you can do down the stretch. So if you want to give Joel Embiid a night off, if you want to give Tobias Harris a night off, if you want to give Seth Curry, Danny Green, if you want to give any of those guys a night off, the sooner you take care of business and win games and get closer to that, chuck points off of that magic number of 5, the better off you'll be and the more control you'll have going into the final games of the regular season.
Well, that was well put in terms of if they can win 1, 2, 3, 4. If they can win these 4 in a row here, which you should be able to, Houston, New Orleans, Detroit, Indiana, 3 games left, and you would be 2 games up in the loss column.
Right.
That means you would only need to win 1 of the last 3, and then you could give those guys a little break.
And the best part of that is you get to knock the Pelicans out of the playoffs.
Well, that's a Western Conference team. I'm sure they don't care about that.
Well, it's just a selfish thing by me.
Right.
But listen, I want to see the Sixers get the 1 seed. I think it puts them in the best situation, as you and Paul talked about earlier, to be in a position to actually have a legitimate chance to get to the NBA Finals.
If they don't get the 1 seed, they ain't getting to the finals.
They might even get to the conference finals.
Put it that way. The 1 seed, they can make the finals. The 2 or 3, don't see it happening.
Yep, I agree.
And that would be very, very
disappointing.
All right, that's it for me. Josh has game night coming up next. It's a Weinberg Wednesday. The fantastic columnist Dave Weinberg from 97.3 ESPN.com. And Kevin McCormick sets the scene for Sixers and Rockets. Ben Golliver's on tomorrow, NBA writer, national NBA writer from the Washington Post, by the way. Check that out. I'm back tomorrow with a full cast of characters, and I can't wait to see you and talk to you right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.